computer. Okay, welcome back. Again, I don't know when this will fall in the regular segment, but I'm super excited to have this gentleman on. He was the editor and creator for DC Comics for nearly a decade. Yeah, I know. It's you. It's you. Most importantly, an editor and the creator for Birds of Prey. He was editor from 96 to 99. And he may have done a little something for a small event that no one remembers called No Man's Land. He's also a music and video producer, founding super fellow of Jewish Impact Films, and developer, look at that guy, of Avalanche Comics Entertainment. Please welcome to the show, Jordan B. Gorfinkel, or Gorf.
Thank you for having me. I'm so honored to be here. I've been binging your podcast for the last week, and I have to admit I've been listening to it on 2x speed. So it's nice to hear you not sounding like Minnie Mouse.
That's fine. I know someone else who does that as well. So that's great. I thought, oh, that poor guy. I hope he doesn't actually, but I appreciate it.
Oh, yeah. I did all the No Man's Land episodes back to back to back.
Whew. That was an event. I was event fatigued doing it on my podcast. So I can't imagine what it was like for you.
So blown away, first of all, that you would spend that much time on something that I worked on, that anybody would, not just you. But second of all, I learned a lot. It was really informative and insightful and extremely erudite. And if I may just give a little, because you can't be too serious over here, give a little, in the ribs. Sure. My favorite part of the whole thing was when you got to No Man's Land number 0 and you read the credit box. And forgive me, I don't remember people's names. They were wonderful, all of your guests. All guys, too. Where are the women? But anyway. You read the credit box, and he said, Jordan B. Gorfinkel, who's that? and another guy said something like, I don't know, I think it was an editor or something.
Oh, gosh.
And I'm thinking, okay, that just puts me right into, the right context. Shouldn't get too starstruck over your own accomplishments. I'm hoping that
was it a joke? Could you tell by my tone like it was a joke? Because I would have known that you were associated with Birds of Prey, so I hope I wasn't being serious.
I don't know, but the fact that you deflated me so effectively was so awesome. I loved it, and it was just great.
Okay.
So the whole thing was wonderful. The idea behind your podcast is wonderful. And before we begin, because you gave a wonderful introduction to me, which I appreciate, this is your 200th episode.
It is.
That's a remarkable achievement. And I meant to bring something of 18 and older vintage to drink. Instead, I only brought tea. So you'll have to pretend that this is beer. Sure. It is it's an A&W mug. It's not alcoholic. Beer, but anyway, root beer. Yeah. It's from Wild Rose, Wisconsin, or close to Wild Rose, Wisconsin, population 781. Anyway, tell me a little bit about yourself. Use this as an opportunity to reintroduce yourself and where you are in life to your own listeners. And by extension, I look forward to hearing about you as well.
Yes, we're meeting for the first time. Yeah, so this show came about, which is ironic because Barbara Gordon started off as a joke as well, just putting on that backer costume. It came out as a bit of a joke that, I should start my own podcast. What's it going to be? And then once I sat down and thought about it, I thought, you know what, a Barbara Gordon podcast wouldn't be so bad. And so I had a lot of fun. My podcast is mostly about, because those episodes that you listened to didn't really have as much, I guess I did do new issues as well, but tracing Barbara Gordon's start from the very beginning, and then also seeing what she was doing currently. And so to just
should we reenact that first cover? I don't know if I've got the right angle. Can I get my leg up high enough in my ripped stockings?
Man. Get a load of those gams.
Yeah.
So it's been great to trace her characterization through the different eras. Obviously, the Silver Age is somewhat problematic. And then see what happened to her during the Killing Joke, and then see Ostrander take a hold of her, see what you guys did, you and Chuck with Birds of Prey. And then the current stuff is
Kim Yale, by the way.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Mustn't forget Kim Yale. And the modern stuff right now is not the best. So it's great to stay in the vintage. But for me, it's been a passion project. It's something that I continue to come back to every month, however busy my life may be. For the past 10 years, I've been teaching Latin And then I'm switching careers. I hope to teach overseas next year. So I took kind of a gap year. I'm actually working at an oncology clinic right now. And yeah, so that's basically it. So she's been my girl and has been with me through thick and thin, and I've learned so much, and I feel like I've grown as a person too, and have learned empathy and learned about different people and everything. So that's kind of what my podcast is about, a learning experience for me and then for listeners as well.
That's a great story. And your podcast is also part of a network or at least an affiliation with other podcasts. How does that work?
Yeah, the BatmanUniverse.net. So originally I was alone, and then Dustin found me, my editor, and asked if I want to join this. And he didn't have nearly as many podcasts as he does currently, but it's great because you can find something for Tim Drake. You've got the Batman and the current Batman books that are going on, people that talk about Batman in literature. So it's a really well-rounded site, and it's nice to be a part of a family, just like Barbara Gordon's a part of the Bat family.
And you all guest on each other's podcasts?
Yeah, for the most part. Yep.
And there really is that much to say on the subject?
Really is. Yeah, that was funny when you said that in our first email. Like, wow, 200, is there really that? There really is that much. I mean, I started in 67, and now I'm in 2001. There, and when
And you
she,
don't look a year over 18.
oh, thank you. Yeah, you can't even tell. Yeah, Barbara Gordon's exploding. She's everywhere. She's in Nightwing. You've got her in Birds of Prey, of course. She's in Batgirl. Robin, she pops up. So it's almost overwhelming to try to narrow down what I need to cover and what I don't need to cover. But yes, there's a wealth of stuff that I can go through.
Yeah, I continue to be very close to my Bat Guys partners, Darren Vincenzo and Scott Peterson. And we speak once a week. Usually we waste about 45 minutes making silly puns and reliving the past, but occasionally we talk about things in the present, and I brought to their attention your podcast, and they were extremely interested, and they wanted me to say hello. So
Okay.
hello, or at least
Hello.
shine the bat signal on you,
Yes,
because that's the
thank
way they would
you.
communicate.
Yeah. I'm always welcome. I'm always interested in talking to more people. And like I said, I mean, this is obviously kind of an offshoot of what we would normally do, but I feel like you deserve just an episode on your own to talk about your legacy with Birds of Prey and No Man's Land as well. So I hope to have you back
Thank
on
you. I
sometime to do
deserve
that.
absolutely nothing, but I appreciate that regardless.
I really do mean it.
Right. And if you saw my royalty check from the Birds of Prey movie, you would see that I deserve absolutely nothing. But
Oh
anyway,
no! Did you get any royalties for
no,
that?
no, 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 no. I was on staff when I created Birds of Prey.
Okay.
And there's a whole story. I can tell it to you if you want, but it may not be apropos right now.
Okay.
But bottom line is when you're on staff at a major corporation like Time Warner, what you create while you're on staff, they own. And there's a policy at DC that goes back many years that editor creators do not get credited for their work. So in one of the world's great ironies, when the credits roll at the end and they have that whole special thanks, it thanks all the writers and artists and so forth, but I am completely absent from it. And I was not invited to the premiere or any of that sort of stuff. And many people say, so are you bitter about it? And I go, no, I'm not bitter at all. No, seriously. The thing that gives me the most pleasure in life is being able to share the wealth with great people. And if the writers and editors and artists over the years who contributed their time and talent to Birds of Prey in some way participated in this largesse, then that makes me happy, and that is more than enough. So God bless you all. I love you all, and I hope that Birds of Prey continues to be the longest running female superhero franchise in the history of comics.
Exciting.
Female superhero team franchise, because Wonder Woman obviously was longer.
Yep. So, I think it deserves that title for sure.
That is the right use of the word deserves. Absolutely.
Yeah.
But hey, DC Comics, you want to throw me a check? Or maybe you send me a DVD? I don't need the DVD. Just throw me the check.
The DVD. I wonder, do you think it's like a confusion because Showcase 96 #3 is really where you saw these women together, but they didn't necessarily have the title Birds of Prey, but maybe they skip over that and just go to like the first Birds of Prey title and don't see your hand in the pre Birds of Prey?
I don't know. I've never really parsed it that deeply. I think chronologically, but please don't trust my memory. Everybody fact check me. Gee, fact checking on the internet. That never happens, does it? I think chronologically, Showcase 96 came somewhere in the middle of the run, or maybe after some of the specials or
Okay.
one-shots and before the series, something like that. I don't even remember. Did it say Birds of Prey, or did it just say Black Canary and Lois Lane, or whatever the heck that was? I don't remember.
Yeah.
But it's neither here nor there. I have been so fortunate to make my hobby make my avocation my vocation, make my hobby my work. It's given me so much pleasure, so many opportunities, so many channels for creativity over the years that I just continue to look forward. I never really look back,
Mm.
except for this podcast, which will
Where
be
we're looking back.
right.
Yeah.
We'll be looking back whether I want to or not.
Yeah. And stories that are not your own, at least.
So, well, everything's part of all of us. You know,
Yes.
who was it? Frost, some great poet, who said that once a poet writes a poem and puts it into the public, once it's published, it's in the public sphere, it is no longer for the writer to interpret. It's no longer in the domain of the poet. It's now in the domain of the public.
Mm.
So these stories are for all of us and about all of us, and we can enjoy them as much and as freely as we want.
Beautiful sentiment. Yeah.
Right. Now say it in Latin. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
I'd have to think about that one.
Right.
Well, you've done something that I don't know if any of my guests have done, which is you gave me homework. I think maybe the second or so email you sent me, you said, here's some homework for you, and sent me, it was the 20th anniversary panel at San Diego Comic-Con from 2016. And I thought, I wonder if I was there. And I did listen to it. And I do remember being at that particular panel. And that was the Benson sisters, for me, their trial by fire, because I wondered, can I trust these writers? Because they were about to start Batgirl and the Birds of Prey. And I heard their history and just that they loved the comics and had read. And I thought, oh, I think I can trust these people. But it was nice to re-listen to all of that. And you were the moderator for that particular panel.
Yeah, that panel was a thrill. By the way, the Benson sisters are so great. They're so cool and so warm, and you meet them, you instantly feel like you're friends with them and their family, because their family was there, and I got to meet them also and got an invitation, which I still have never taken advantage of, to come hang out and maybe have a barbecue or something.
Oh.
So I'm probably totally inventing that in my mind. But hey, Benson sisters, that's just the great first impression you give off. So there you go. And don't worry, I'm not giving out your address, so you're not going to
Please
get
don't.
strange visitors from another planet.
Yeah.
And aren't we all that? But I'm curious, where were you seated, and what do you remember about the audience? Because when I am a moderator at San Diego Con, I'm sitting at a table on a dais and I'm looking out over a crowd, and they gave us a pretty big room. And I have one perspective, but I'm always curious, what's it like when you turn the camera around and you do the over-the-shoulder shot from your vantage point?
Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was a pretty healthy crowd. I was stage left, so I was on the right side facing you guys. And yeah, I think I remember because you had Joseph Illidge, you had Gail Simone and the Benson sisters. So I think just with the names that you almost had Chuck Dixon. I forgot that you tried to call him and then it didn't go through.
Oh, that was such a bummer. Anyway.
Yeah, but talking about the different runs and just the legacy of that team, I thought was really good. And I remember the Batgirl, because I used to see her all the time, who wore the Stephanie Brown. I saw her every Comic-Con. I was like, there she is. And
yeah, she's about this tall and has a personality like this.
Yes, absolutely. But no, I thought it was great from my end, for sure.
I have a great Batgirl story that I want to tell you from San Diego Con in a second. From my vantage point, it was really remarkable. First of all, it was the 20th anniversary panel. And the fact that it was a full house. And I would say it's standing room only, except here's the thing. When I looked out on the crowd, what warmed my heart more than anything were the number of wheelchairs in the audience.
Mm-hmm.
And there have been people who've come up to me over the years who have appreciated so much mainstreaming a wheelchair-bound disabled person like Barbara Gordon, and treating her as anybody would, a capable person like that, as a flesh and blood capable member of society, and not looked down upon, not looked up upon, just looked regularly like a regular person. And I'm probably sounding a little mealy mouthed right now and trying to describe my feelings, and it's a little awkward, but I this is really heartfelt. And one of my favorite interactions, I don't think it was from that particular panel, but one of my favorite interactions with somebody who was wheelchair bound at San Diego was when they started to explain to me, oh, you know what? I think this is how it happened. I don't remember who was with me. Maybe Chuck can correct me. But I think what happened was I saw somebody wheeling through the aisles in San Diego, and I pushed my way through to catch up with the person to ask them about the wheelchair, because it was one of these incredible sporty racy models that had angled wheels
Oh, wow.
and
Oh,
had
yeah.
no handles on the back.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I learned that the kind of wheelchair that it was up to that point generally drawn, I know you've touched on this in your podcast, was generally drawn up to that point, was the kind of the disposable hospital kind, which folds like an accordion. And really, if you spend too much time in that chair, it's very uncomfortable and actually very dangerous, because you can't it's not molded to the body the way the body needs it to react to you. So I don't remember if I followed up with that person, but then I started doing research. And during my tenure as the Birds of Prey editor, one of the most important things to me was that they kept the wheelchair right. And whenever you can tell when I wasn't editing it during that period of time, because if somebody else was handling the character, the handles would reappear again. And Chuck did a very clever thing at some point where he put into dialogue, somebody offered to push her wheelchair, and she said, "No, I don't get pushed around. That's why there are no handles on this thing." And I'm thinking, yeah, that's right. Anyway, so the quick Batgirl story. Oh well, let me finish with the panel. So the panel was full, and again, the fact that there were that many people interested after 20 years, and that the characters mean so much, and to have people on the stage who were my successors, to know that it started with an idea that I had in my head. And I remember walking, we used to have Bat Summits where we would go away once or twice a year, all the Batman editors led by Denny O'Neil of blessed memory, and all of the editors and the writers and sometimes the artists, we would brainstorm what's coming up for the next 6 months. And one of our favorite things to do would be to take walks. It would take place in Tarrytown, which is just at the tip of Manhattan, right by the whatever the bridge is I'm blanking right now. And I remember taking ambling walks with the writers and pitching the idea of this kind of peanut butter and chocolate combination of characters, because it's hard to remember back then. Black Canary was an extraordinarily failed character. This was a second generation character who had been through 3 or 4 revamps, and that memorable costume from the 80s, was it, in the Justice League, the costume?
Sure.
Sorry, listeners can't see me do that. That's like in a comedy routine, right? When a comedian will go for the punchline, and then they did this, and then there's silence for a second, and then the audience starts laughing uproariously, and you have no idea what hand signal the guy did. Anyway, so I fluttered my fingers like the little flaps, or what do you call those things? Like on a cowboy jacket, the little streamers, the frills, fringe. Yeah. Thank you, fringe that fly off of it. Anyway, so she had been a failed character who had been reinvented many, many times, and they figured, we're not going to do anything with her anyway. You can do with her what you want. And then we were big fans. We, being the Bat guys, were big fans of Barbara Gordon. And while we were saddened to have her be violated the way she was in the controversial Killing Joke, we were extraordinarily gladdened to see John Ostrander and Kim Yale reinvent her in a way where she was arguably a more powerful character than she ever would have been as a Batman knockoff. And I know there are people today who will say or regret that she was miraculously healed, which is something we promised we would never do. And to them, I say, I understand that. But look, we will always have those wonderful stories. And we wouldn't have the wonderful new Batgirl stories if DC Comics hadn't made the decision that they did. I know amongst your podcast errati, the Burnside stories are hit or miss for you guys. I personally love them. I thought it was just a really nifty modern take. And my philosophy on all this stuff is, when I'm done with a job, then I get out of the way. It's like the way a presidential handoff should be, where the president is one of those rarefied people who understands the job and knows what the next person in line is going to go through, and feels like the best thing they can do is get out of their way and let them find their own voice and find their own way. So it was like that for me in the Bat books also. All right, I'm talking endlessly over here. I'll tell you my Batgirl story later.
Okay. Okay. Do you think, I mean, you had just come off of, well, I guess it kind of coincided, but with No Man's Land, and you just had, I think, a weight behind you and your name carried meaning. Do you think if it were anyone else that tried to pitch this, that it wouldn't have worked? But it was sort of a perfect storm of all the people involved, and that's why it came together and worked the way it did?
By it, you mean
Birds of
No
Prey,
Man's Land? Or
sorry.
Birds
With
of Prey?
Birds of
That's
Prey,
okay.
yeah.
Um, Gosh, I can't really kind of redo history. It's just, let's put it this way. I had the youthful ignorance and exuberance that made me think there was nothing that wasn't possible. And I had the great fortune of having executives who supported us and indeed nudged us to come up with those ideas or get those ideas generated from freelancers. Most of these things weren't editorially created. Most of them came from the freelance community. And that's an important distinction because, as we touched on a little bit earlier, editors' jobs were shepherd ideas, and people ask, what's the job of an editor? I'll get back to that in a second, the original topic of your question in a second, but what's an editor in comics? Because it's kind of this nebulous job. The answer is you have to be a jack of all trades. You have to understand everything that needs to be accomplished in the comic book pipeline. So you have to understand how to brainstorm ideas, how to write. You have to, if you can't draw, even if you can't draw, I can, not as well as here. What have I got over here? So I do a weekly cartoon strip. So just to show you old school artwork over here.
Yeah.
Here, this is one of my characters working out at a treadmill, which is what I feel. Here, this is me strenuously trying to come up with answers to avoid talking about the comic books that I know nothing about that you're going to ask me about later.
Oh,
okay,
sure.
There you go. Anyway, so the job. So even if you don't know how to draw, at least to understand drawing and to be able to guide everybody who's in on the creative process. And then there's production, and then there's post-production, and then there's marketing, and then there's all the licensing stuff and liaisoning with all the various different companies and licensors and movies and TV shows and everything. You got to understand how to do it all so that you can guide everything seamlessly. And you're juggling, because we probably had 100 freelancers. Freelancers, by the way, are per diem talent that do not live and work in your office. When people think of the comic book creation process, they imagine that they're worker bees in endless mazes who are all creating the stuff all day long right there. No, all of this is created from wherever they may be around the world, and they send the work in. In the old days, it was via FedEx, and nowadays it's all digital and so forth. So the editorial process is that you have to, the editor's process, you have to be able to guide and help everybody in what they're doing. And I know that this was going to lead back to something I've totally lost my train of thought. So back to your question then. And I guess it does dovetail. Do I think it could have been done under different circumstances by somebody else? Yeah, because there are lots of ideas out there. Somebody said there are only 5 ideas in the world, and it's all about execution. Would it have been executed in the same way? No. Because I had a specific thought process that I'm happy to share with you about how all this came together. But no man is an island, or no person is an island. And this was also the product of the zeitgeist, what we were all living through and thinking about in the 90s. And of course, the groupthink of all of the amazingly talented people who would take this germ of an idea that I had and build it into something that I never could have done all by myself. And that continues to flourish because of the appreciation people have for the track that we laid.
I
Does
have
that
two.
answer the question? I'm
It does. It
trying.
does. Yep. I have two follow-up questions with the editor when you were saying, because that was actually one of my questions, what is the duty of an editor? Because I've actually been really hard on the current Batgirl editor. Just, I don't want to say I feel like she's not
Oh
doing her
no.
job, but I don't know. Would you be responsible for continuity errors? Like, would you be checking to see this does not
Okay.
match up with
Yes.
something? Okay. Okay. And then do you
Yeah.
actually
So, and
read?
I've heard
Oh,
you call out some continuity errors.
yes.
No, I was just going to say, I've heard you call them out.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking in my mind, well, there's no going back to fix that.
Okay. I just wanted to
But
check because I thought maybe
also,
it's not her job.
also, yeah, no, it's definitely an editor's job. At this point, it's probably the internet's job even more than the editors. But I ask everybody's forgiveness because an editor is doing 50 things at the same time and trying their best to keep all the plates spinning and to keep everything accurate. And nowadays, with all of these shared universes, it's not just one editor who's overseeing things. It's probably many editors, and for that matter, many departments within the corporation who are all sharing the character. So I'm going to touch on something that you guys talked about in the No Man's Land podcast episodes, which I encourage everybody to go back and listen to because they're really terrific, as is the entire enterprise here.
Oh, thanks.
You're welcome. Heartfelt. The thing that you pointed out was that in the Batman of our era, the Denny O'Neil era, artists could interpret Batman to look as they wanted him to look. We didn't adhere to a specific template for the most part, to a specific template and say the ears have to be just this long and the padding on the shoulder has to be this shape and the bat and the cape must attach to the bat in this way and, you know, all that sort of stuff. So you had your Kelly Jones Batman that was living side by side with the Graham Nolan Batman, to the Jim Ballant one, to the on and on and on and on. And forgive me if I'm not calling out other wonderful people that we worked with. And they were all coexisting very well. And that helped us, I think, to give a little wink wink to the reader to say, you can't take this too seriously. I mean, obviously, this is the same character, and we do want to make sure that the stories have a tight through line and a solid continuity. But at the same time, we want to give these characters room to breathe and to grow and to let artists and creators have their voice and put their stamp on it. And I think that's. Let me tell you something wonderful that Denny O'Neil said about Batman. I'm not sure if he originated this idea, but I give him credit for it. So there you go. Internet, correct me. Or throw tomatoes, virtual tomatoes, virtual rotten tomatoes. He said that what makes Batman the best character in comics, and I think in all of fiction, you can argue with me, but you're going to have to do it online when I can't talk back to you, is that Batman is the most reinventable character. There is a Batman for every generation, and there is a Batman for every person. And sometimes, and this is my addition to this, many different Batmen and bad people will coexist. So for example, in the aughts, in the 2000s, on the one side of the spectrum, you had the very serious Dark Knight trilogy of movies. And on the other side of the spectrum, you had Batman the Brave and the Bold with its jazzy, gosh, golly, gee whiz kind of mentality, right? And one was specifically WB Kids animation, and one was specifically very serious, highbrow, a serious highbrow artistic interpretation of the Dark Knight, really adult oriented, or at least maturely realized. And nobody blinked an eye. This is the Batman for this population. This is the Batman for this population. And it all works. It's hard to do that with Superman. It's hard to do that with Captain America and some of these other characters. But for Batman, it works great. And I think that's why the character will live on and flourish forever, because there's a Batman for all generations.
That's what I did for the Birds of Prey film, actually. I thought, this is not like the comics. I'm going to go in with an open mind and recognize that this is a completely separate and creative idea. And I liked it. I'm glad I went in that way because I actually enjoyed that film.
A little tidbit here, Christina Hodson, who wrote the film, I think she's a wonderful writer. And one of the assignments that I had was I was working with Paramount and with their wonderful marketing department, specifically their home release marketing department. And I created a mini comic that got packaged in with the home video release of Bumblebee.
Okay.
And the assignment was bridge the Michael Bay movies with this interpretation.
Mm.
And so I got to go to the Paramount lot and watch the movie ahead of release to familiarize myself and so forth. And I was just struck by what a wonderful writer is. So much, again, here's this word, so much heart, great structure, realistic dialogue, a terrific sense of whimsy, knows how to balance reality and genre. So I was very, very pleased and honored that she was the one who wrote the Birds of Prey movie. I can't speak to the movie itself, but I can certainly wax enthusiastic about the writer.
Yeah, that's
And no, I'm
fine.
not saying
Yeah.
that as a plus or minus. I haven't seen the movies. That's why I
Oh,
literally
okay.
can't speak to it.
Okay, I gotcha. So my second follow-up question about editor is, would you read the script before it went into art production, or would you be given like the pre-comic before it was published? What would you be looking at and previewing?
What do you mean by previewing?
I guess before it went into actual publication, would it just be the script from the writer before art was put in place? Would you be given a fully drawn and realized comic, but it hasn't hit the shelves yet, so you need to check over it before it goes? What part of the process would you come in and read through the issue?
Sure. Remind me after we're done. I'll give you a link to something that I created, which shows the steps of creating a comic book.
Please.
And really, this doubles as an answer to your question, because every one of the steps that you'll see in this fun little PDF is are the steps. Every one of the steps is editor. Got to go with the grammar here. So for you people watching on Zoom, you get to see the flub. For you, unfortunately, you're going to have to edit this to make me sound like I didn't make a mistake.
Oh.
Or if you really want to have fun with me, keep it all in and then just add a little overdub going, haha. And by the way, if you do that, I will laugh so hard.
Oh boy, I'll try. I mean, when I'm editing, I'm sure I'll remember. I'll add a little
Right. Just
SFX in
so
there.
listeners, if you hear a ha, then you know, or maybe we'll do a Simpsons ha, you'll know that it was a little inside joke added in post. Anyway, we first discuss the ideas with the talent, with the writers, and sometimes the artists are in on it also. I mean, there are writer artists, there are artists who will conceive the story but perhaps not dialogue it themselves. I mean, there are lots of different ways that you can parse the creative process in creating a comic book or graphic novel. And we will approve the idea. Sometimes the idea comes in not in discussion, sometimes it comes in rather in a treatment form. And a treatment is basically a prose summary with the beginning, middle, and end. And a tip for all of you who are listening to this right now: when you are pitching a story to anybody in any storytelling medium, whether it's a prose novel or editor, or it's a film producer, or it's a comic book editor, don't think that you have to build in the tropes of suspense and comedy and all the different parts that make a story interesting in your pitch. The thing we want to hear is it a complete story? Does it have a beginning, a middle, and an end? Just give it to me straight and no nonsense, and I will trust, if I hire you, that you have the ability to execute on the idea. Otherwise, I wouldn't be hiring you as a writer, because something's led us to be working together. Prior work, or maybe great samples. We can talk some other time about what it's like to review samples that come in, because people probably think I send in samples and it's like sending it into the great beyond, into the void. Well, I'll just tell you this quickly, folks. Here is Gorf's philosophy on breaking into comics. It's very simple. It's not difficult to break into comics. It's difficult to be good enough to break into comics. And the rest is interpretation. So after we get the story approved, then the writer will write a script, and there are plot first scripts, which is also called Marvel style, or there's a full script, which is DC style, classically.
Mm-hmm.
And the full script will have the shot description followed by the dialogue, and on and on and on. And the whole thing is realized out of the imagination of the writer, and then the artist gets it, and the artist interprets based on that, that full script. The Marvel style was created, forgive me if I'm telling you anything you already know, the Marvel style was created by the great Stan Lee of blessed memory. And Stan at the time was working on a gazillion amounts of comic books all at the same time, because the entire Marvel universe was coming out of his head in the 60s. And he had brilliant artists like Jack Kirby and later on Neil Adams, and earlier on, why am I blanking on his name, Steve Ditko, and John Buscema, and his wonderful cousin, I think it was, Sal, that I had the pleasure of working with, and on and on and on. So you have this bullpen of wonderful artists who didn't need to be told what to do. They were excellent storytellers in their own right. They understood it, were truly reinventing the craft as they were going. So Stan would write a treatment. He would just write in paragraph form. This happens, that happens, this happens, that happens. Okay, go away and draw it in 22 pages or 25 pages, however many it were. And then he'd get it back, and then he would dialogue it afterwards. And the reason why a lot of the Marvel comics of that era were more fluid than the DC Comics of that era is because in DC Comics, it was kind of like saying, we're going to make a cake, and we're going to have somebody bake it and somebody frost it, but we're going to do it separately and hope that it comes together in a way where it matches. But what happens if somebody bakes a vanilla cake and then comes up with, I don't know, strawberry frosting, and well, that does taste good together, but you understand what I'm getting at here. Yeah. Something that wouldn't go together well. But sardines. Somebody comes with I don't know why that popped into my head. You get the idea.
Yeah.
Whereas with Stan, it started with the writer. It was realized visually by the brilliant artist, and then it would go back to I feel bad that your listeners can't see my hand motions over here because I'm really doing some sweet hand motions. And then it would go back to the writer to make sure that the dialogue truly reflected what was in the art, and moreover, clarified areas in the story where maybe the artist didn't quite do what was needed for the story, and then the writer could pivot. But if it's all done with the writer being, his or her job being done with the script, and then it goes to the artist, then it's the editor's job to try to figure out, okay, does this work? How do I try to make it work? So you're adding in almost another artificial voice. In an ideal world, getting back to what you were talking about, after the artwork comes back, the editor reviews it, makes sure that there's nothing untoward about it, that it all kind of works, and then sends it off to the letterer and the colorist, and then has the whole package brought together in her or his hands, and reviews it before sending it down to production to maybe make some corrections and put it into the template and make it into the comic books that get published and loaded up online. And if the editor has the time and the knowledge and the inclination, they can polish it in a way where they're looking out for continuity, and they're looking out for just basic storytelling sense. I mean, basic things like, I wish I had an example right here, basic things like, there's a rule of thumb that most people, I have a wonderful intern named Daniel, and I'm purposely giving him a shout out because he's going to listen to this and go, I can't believe he said my name. Okay, he's a great guy. He's the first high school intern I've ever had. And he is easily as capable and savvy as any of the collegiate interns that I've had, wonderful as they all are. And one of the things that we're doing for fun is he is an artist and a storyteller. So I'm having him take a script or a portion of the script from a movie and reinterpret it as a comic book. And then we're going through all the stages, and I'm kind of his editor. And one of the things that he did, to his credit, was, gosh, I wish I had an example. You know what? Hold on. Let me just draw this quickly. I'm going to put it on my bill for the accountant. Okay.
Okay.
So when you were doing a comic book layout, here are two examples for you, and I'm going to describe it so that your listeners will understand what it is that I've drawn, but I encourage them to come check this out. Okay, can you see this over here?
Yep.
Okay, great. So what we're looking at is two squares that are divided up into three panels. In the first example, you have two panels stacked on the left and one vertical panel on the right. On the bottom example, you have one panel vertical on the left and two panels stacked on the right. So I ask you, please tell me, in the first panel, what order, excuse me, the first set of panels, example, what order do we read these panels in?
I would say top, bottom, and then right.
Top, bottom, and then right. Okay, fair answer. Is there any reason that I wouldn't assume to read top, right, and then bottom?
There's no reason, though I do remember there used to be arrows in
It's true.
some vintage
Good old
comics.
Carmine Infantino arrows,
Yeah.
or you know, fancy Latin looking fingers, right?
Sure.
That would point like this.
Yes.
I did it again. Point like this. You can't
Yeah.
see anything. So you're absolutely right. There is no way without arrows of knowing what direction you're supposed to read it in. Whereas on the bottom one, it is eminently clear. The vertical panel gets read first, and then you read the stack panels. Daniel intuited that or learned it. I think he said he actually learned it from a book that he read a long time ago. And this is basic storytelling. Now go back to your comic books that you read and find all the examples. And you, now that I've pointed this out, you're going to see it. And anytime somebody does a panel layout where they've got the stacking on the left, you're going to go, no, 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 no. You're not supposed to do that because it's not clear storytelling.
Mm.
Stacking on the left drives, especially Scott Peterson, crazy.
Ooh.
And that is a small example of what a good editor will do.
Okay.
That an editor will realize where the storytelling is unclear and use their expertise to clarify it. And that ultimately is the most important job.
Wow. This is good stuff, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I'm getting too professorial. We can talk about other things like,
No,
hey,
I appreciate it. I've wondered actually for a while, just because I've been giving current editors a hard time. I'm like, what is their job? And
okay,
so this
wait.
has cleared it
That
up.
was my question back to you then.
Okay.
How do you decide that, decide, that's a bad word to use. How did you come to the opinion
Yeah.
that an editor, this editor or any others,
Sure.
are not doing their job?
Okay. Properly. Yeah.
How do you as
As a reader,
as a
yeah, or a
storyteller
consumer.
yourself, as a reader, a consumer, a teacher,
Mm-hmm.
what are you seeing, and what do you think the editor could be doing better?
Yeah, so I think, and I'll focus just on this current run of Back Row, which is now ended, which is good for my heart. Part of it is just seeing the same thing over and over again, and actions happening that have happened in like a previous arc. So something happened where James Jr. fell off, he died, and Jim Gordon accused Batgirl of killing him, and that happened in Batgirl 19 with Gail Simone. So something like that, like not catching that something exactly like this happened before, and then just weird writing from the writer that doesn't seem like people would actually talk in the manner that they do, or things don't connect, or maybe thought bubbles should be placed somewhere else. I don't know. And it just, I wondered, because novel editors, I assume, read the whole work. And so I wondered, is this person not catching that this is really weird dialogue and it doesn't really match up with what's happening, or it's a bad characterization? So I just wondered, am I putting too much on because I was holding the writer accountable for sure, but I also felt like part of this might actually come down to the editor too, and what's going on in her corner as well.
I think it is the responsibility of both the writer and the editor to know these things. I also don't know, honestly, because I haven't been paying attention. I've been reading the latest Batgirl on and off because I'm a fanboy and I like Batgirl.
Sure.
And for me, I should stay on top of what's going on. I don't read everything, and a lot of the stuff I'm not excited about anymore because people evolve and their tastes grow. But there's still nothing better than a great superhero story told well. So I don't know. Maybe this editor, there's been a lot of shakeups, as you know, a lot of revolving door in terms of positions, and unfortunately, editors are not trained in the old style the way I was. I now sound like a geezer right now. This is the way it was done in my day.
There's an onion on your belt?
Yeah, yeah, and my belt is up to here. Fortunately, it's cropped, so you can't see it. But yeah, and I'm wearing a sweatshirt over it also because I'm old and I'm cold. That's what cold is. It's old with a C on the front of it, just in case you didn't know. I just made that up, folks. Anyway, so for all I know, the editor was thrust into a position without having the time or the resources to be able to come up to speed or to do their job well, or perhaps wasn't trained fully in the job that they are expected to do. I can tell you that back in the day, when we had the system of group editors overseeing editors, so you had the triumvirate of Mike Carlin, the executive editor, and Denny O'Neil, and of course the late great Archie Goodwin. Oh my gosh, the stories we can tell about Archie. I could still see his sweater sitting on the back of his chair. Archie taught me how to balloon. That's a whole nother thing. Back in those times, it was a mentoring system. Whether it was proactive or de facto, we would learn by the masters who were around us and had been doing it for 10, 20 years or so. And we picked up all of their tools over a period of time, and they also backstopped us. They were watching out for us. I think nowadays, for reasons that I don't completely understand or have insight into, the editorial system is far more top-down, where you have executives who are creating by fiat or editing by fiat, and it's the job of the editors to do what they're told to do. And there may be things going on that we're just not aware of within the hierarchy that are affecting the output, the content, in ways that we couldn't possibly suspect. So it's a really complex ecosystem or ecosystem. Although now it is an ecosystem, ECH, right? Because it's top down.
Yeah.
And who knows? So I always try to give the benefit of the doubt to everybody and politely point out to them that I'm a fan and here are some things to be thinking about, and let's try to do better in the future.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think that Julie Chen is listening to my podcast, though I have called her out. But yeah, only for love of the character.
I'm going on email. She is now.
Oh, no.
Twitter. No, I'm not going to do that.
Oh, boy.
But I expect, because just getting to know you a little bit, Stella, from the little bit that we've been talking here, I'm sure whatever you've done was with a smile and from a place of deep appreciation. And I can tell you, me as a professional on the good days, I always appreciate somebody telling me how to do something constructive
sure, yes,
and how to do something better, because I'd rather know now than find out later from the internet. That's always much worse.
Yeah. And
no, and I realize but even so, even if I find it out from the internet, and I realize that was kind of insensitive of me because you are the internet, but even if I find it out from there, like we'll go back to the example of your podcasts on No Man's Land. You guys and gal were calling out stuff that I should have caught. I should have thought about. We could have done better. And I think we did a really good job, but you can always do better. And I take that seriously, and we do listen. When people talk to professionals reasonably and constructively and just don't go ape crazy over us in an unreasonable way, we want to listen. We want to be better. We want to do our jobs better. Most of all, we just want to be great storytellers and leave a great legacy. So on behalf of editors everywhere, thank you for watching our backs.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think the only thing I had a problem with was the whole Huntress thing. And I was the only one in her corner, and my friends were like, no, that's how it should have been. Batman shouldn't trust her. So that would probably.
Yeah, but you also called out, I think all of you called out some inconsistencies there, where Huntress would do something in one story that seemed to fly in the face of something she had just done in another story. And that's basic continuity, and that's something that has to be caught. I don't remember if I was still on staff at the time, because I retired amicably from DC Comics about halfway through No Man's Land.
Okay.
And I wasn't there for the execution of the latter half of the story. But despite the fact that it all originated with an outline that I created and was greenlit and all that sort of stuff. But again, it's a team effort. So it may have begun here. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you have to remember to talk. You want to ask your question?
I will. We can do it now. Yeah.
Just do
So
it now because I
the
ruined it.
what
Go
are
ahead.
you wearing segment. So what are you wearing, Gorf?
Can you see that?
It says he's wearing a hat for listeners. I survived no man's land.
With a little Batman cloisonne pin.
Yeah.
I just wanted to say cloisonne. Did I say it
I
right, or
love
is it
it.
cloisonne?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's a pin
Yeah,
with a sharp thing on the back
I like it.
that is poking into my head right now.
Oh
Ouch.
dear. Hopefully you'll be okay.
Credit to where it's deserved. Devin Grayson gave this to me as a gift,
Oh.
and I wear it to conventions. I just save it for conventions. That's why it looks so pristine after all this time. And
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you, Devin. Wonderful, wonderful writer and a great human being, who
Yeah.
is a female, for those who aren't
Yes.
clear.
Yep. Two of my friends, Don and Josh, who you would have heard on separate episodes, they
Yeah.
actually interviewed her for the BatmanUniverse.net, and I know they enjoyed speaking to her about her run on Nightwing and Batman and everything.
Oh,
So,
wow. Okay, I'll have to check that
yeah.
out. And you
Um,
listening folks and viewing folks should too.
yes, absolutely. So before we get
I'm
into
plugging
this,
things for you. Come on.
thank you. So checks in the mail. Um, before we get into this main
Is
event,
it going to be equal to my Birds of Prey check?
it might be a bit
Go
more. I
ahead.
don't know.
Main event,
Uh,
yes.
I like to ask my guests because we've been going through this weird time with COVID, and depending on your political stance, also the election and things like that. I ask what you have been finding your joy with. What sorts of things have been giving you joy? I call this Shags mac and cheese a comfort and joy. You know, are
Yes,
you
that's
watching
right.
anything? Are you reading anything? What are you doing to keep your spirits up in these weird times?
Oh gosh. Well, there are a number of things. I'll try to pick out my top three. On my creative side, one of my biggest joys is I wrote a screenplay with my
Mm,
wonderful writing partner Lisa Klink, and you may recognize her as being one of the writers from No Man's Land. And I think whoever was your guest on that particular issue was that standalone issue with a guy defending his house for the entire issue.
oh yeah.
Uh, and I know you had to hit the internet to look her up, but she was a writer and story editor on Star Trek Voyager and a bunch of other genre shows. She continues to write television. She's a novelist right now. In fact, she's doing the 1 month novel challenge
Oh,
right now as we speak, where you have to write an entire novel, first draft, in 1 month.
oh boy.
So she's a little busy. So
Okay.
we've been collaborating for years, and we wrote a really nifty screenplay that is now in the process of being ripped apart by people who know better than us, so that we can then rewrite it and get it over to my agent. And I can't tell you about it except to say it's really nifty. And if there's anybody who's listening to the podcast who would like to know more, you can find me at Jewish Cartoon, which we'll talk about later, but find me at Jewish Cartoon and ping me in some social media mystical way. We'll talk about it. So that's one of the great joys. It's something that I've wanted to do for a long time, and it was really, it continues to be a terrific experience, even the being shredded part.
Can you say what
So that's one.
genre it is?
Yeah, rom-com.
Okay. Okay. Very cool.
Yeah,
And for
I know.
me,
It's like after Batman, for you.
anything is lighter.
That goes together, right? Batman rom-com.
Absolutely.
But like I
Batman
said
and rom-com.
before, there could be a Batman rom-com.
There could
Batman
be.
works
I mean, the
in
Lego
every.
Batman, there's kind of some rom-com in there,
Yeah, that's true.
actually.
That's right. You're absolutely right. Right.
Yeah.
And is it Lego or Lego?
I say Lego, but also people make fun of the way I say leg and
But okay,
egg. So,
we are together on that because
oh,
I said Lego my entire life.
yes.
Just like I say roof instead of roof, and people go,
Oh,
"Oh, roof, 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 roof." Yeah, it's both a bark and the thing on top of your house. It's both
yes.
of those things.
Okay.
So I'm going back to Lego just because of you.
Okay. I
That's it.
appreciate that. See, I'm
I'm
not the
done
only
with this
one.
Lego thing. Lego my ego.
No worries.
Okay, where were we?
No, I was just gonna say that what I just got the new Spider-Man Miles Morales video game, so that's what's been giving me joy. And my
Ooh.
birthday's on Saturday, so it's been fun to have little activities
Hey.
leading up to it. And this has been amazing. When you wrote in, you're like, "Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it Wednesday." I'm like, "Oh boy, let's do it." So this has been so fun so far. I'm so appreciative that you're on.
Oh, it's my pleasure, and to all of your listeners, I'm sorry.
I don't think that's what their reaction is going to be when I post on Twitter after this that I got you on. So
Well,
just
it
be warned.
depends. If they're listening, they're going to go, not bad. If they're watching, they're going, oh man.
Oh boy. Well, we'll see. I think people can surprise you.
And by the way, comedy comes in threes. There's another lesson for you folks. And I just came full circle with the gag about how you're not supposed to reference a visual sight gag when it's a listening medium. And I'm not going to tell you what I just did because it
Yeah,
wasn't that funny
that's
anyway.
fine. It's fine.
But I always have to see it through. Got to pay off those gags.
Yep.
But by the way, that's another reason why rom-com is natural for me. At the same time that I was working on Batman in the evening, I moonlighted as a weekly cartoonist.
Okay.
And over the course of many, many years, I've really gotten deep into the discipline of writing a 4-panel cartoon. And it really takes a lot of discipline. Now we're talking about right now, but a shout out to my friend and mentor, dear person, Lynn Johnston of For Better or For Worse fame, for those of you who remember that great comic strip. She really taught me so much that was important about how you distill an idea into 4 panels when you're literally limited to those 4 panels with clarity and with humor and also with a lot of heart. And that experience combined with my Batman experience led me to be interested in doing a screenplay that's a rom-com. So everything in some way is connected or follows from one to another.
Very cool.
Okay, so you asked me for 3 things, or at least I offered 3 things that are giving me pleasure. Another thing that's giving me pleasure is that my 4 children were under the same roof playing Legos together. Okay, so that's 2.
Okay.
Comedy comes in threes. There will be a payoff at some point. We'll
Okay.
find it.
When
Maybe
I'm
I'll
least
hand it off to you.
expecting it.
You're
Okay.
at least expecting it, yes.
Okay.
And it was really a surprise and a great joy to have all of us together again, because believe it or not, I've got a couple of daughters who are in college, and it's just the boys who are with me right now. It's Ashira, Eliana, Noam, and Ori. And having us all together at the same time was really quite unexpected, because when people who were in your household as children now come back as full-fledged adults, on the one hand, yes, they have their own opinions, and I must respect those opinions, he says, biting his bottom lip. And on the other hand, they come with just a world of new experiences that just enrich you. And it's just been fantastic and terrific. And Ashira is working in music and television. And she's also a great writer, and she's writing and producing her own songs. And Eliana is a student right now, still in her first year in COVID, so it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
And the 2 boys are doing distance learning right now because unfortunately somebody in their class contracted the pandemic. And so now everybody's on a 2-week lockdown or what do you call it?
Isolation or quarantine?
Yeah, quarantine. That's the word I'm looking for. Yes, quarantine. So that's joy number 2. Okay, your turn. Joy number 2 for you.
Oh gosh, I didn't know that we were gonna have.
I'm mainly buying time to come up with the 3rd one. So go ahead.
Oh, I see. Well, just that this week leading up to my birthday, I've been doing different adventures and just getting to hang out with friends and spending time with them. So that's joy number 2 for me.
Okay, that's great. I was hoping to buy more time, but I'll go with it. Joy number 3, that's COVID specific. You know what it is? This one is a little more psychological. I have been traveling. After I parted amicably from DC Comics, I formed Avalanche Comics Entertainment. And I continued, in addition to doing my weekly comic strip, I was also in music. And I continued to do music. And I travel constantly. So I will be in Los Angeles or New York, working on mainstream entertainment projects and graphic novels and film and television, what have you, and a lot of corporate work too. It's been a real joy to work with corporations like Microsoft and Seagate and Alibaba.com and museums and just all kinds of different verticals, as we call it, different business segments on their storytelling. And that was an incredible joy while I was traveling. And then on weekends I would do music, so I was constantly running around the country. People used to ask me, where do you live? And I would say seat 7A on a United Airlines flight, 30,000 feet in the air.
Sure.
We can talk later. I have something called the Super Storytelling Seminar, where I teach, or I not teach, but I instruct people in business how to use the superhero principles of storytelling to improve their own branding and communications in a creative way.
Mm.
And comics is a wonderful, I mean, you know this as a teacher, is a wonderful tool for incubating ideas in the most direct way. Because what do you need from comics? Excuse me, what do you need to share an idea in comics? All you need is a means to draw, the ability to write words on a page, and then your own hand and creativity. One person can do the whole thing and then hand off the idea, and the idea is communicated. I mean, it goes all the way back to hieroglyphics. And the modern version of it is the comics, or the cartoons, or manga, or whatever. But it's all the same thing. It's all the same kind of communication. And to be able to get executives from Fortune 500 companies, or for that matter, students, because I do this in schools also, students from grades 1 all the way through 12, and indeed in college, to take their complex ideas and think about them the way that ideas need to be portrayed in today's society, where we don't have the patience to be able to sit through any kind of complex delivery. Instead, you have to be quick, concise, and creative. So how do you do that? Well, if you put it's like what I showed you before. Sorry, listeners, but this board, comic book board here, is exactly what I use. So if you can see, and folks, I'll describe it for you. We have a regular 8.5 by 11 Bristol board page, the same page that the professionals use. And in fact, until I moved it a second ago in order to not be blocked, where is that thing over here? I'll show you my non-repro blue pencils. Oh, here they are. Look at this. I have my supplies right here. Non-repro blue pencils combined with this board. And the board has on top of that lettering guides, so that you can do your nice, neat capital letters, and then a space to draw underneath. And to be able to learn how to take any complex idea and deliver it in 4 panels with a minimum of words, restricted by the space that you're given on this board, is an incredibly invaluable tool in today's day and age. And so that's a long way around saying that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. I've been applying my superpower, which is storytelling, towards all kinds of amazing global projects. But we don't travel now, or at least travel is very limited. And even if I do travel, there's nowhere to stay, there's nowhere to go, nobody's meeting. So what do I do? So I would say that my third, not necessarily joy, but benefit from this period, it has been introspection. Learning to stop running around and find a stillness and an inner, what's the word I'm looking for? A new realization of what it is that I want to do and who I am. And it's very Zen. I'm not describing it very well, but I'm sure there are listeners, and perhaps even you, who have found the same experience, where slow down and smell the roses.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm doing. I mean, I take long walks now. I enjoy and appreciate the little things like never before. So I would say that's the third thing.
Yeah. See, I just like to talk about it because I feel like there are some positive aspects to COVID. You just have to work through to get it out there, but absolutely slowing down and taking care, even if it's with other people too. I think reforming relationships, or making a point of seeking people out, especially when we were in quarantine, you had to come up with inventive ideas in order to talk to other people. I think that was great. I think it strengthened friendships for me. Absolutely. So.
Right. Yeah, you're right. I reached out to somebody from a contact from 2011.
Oh.
yeah, that I hadn't even thought about for many years, but why not? That's
Yeah.
what people are doing in this day and age, and this has given us license to do that, to make those connections or
Mm-hmm.
to reconnect. You
Absolutely.
said you're in oncology now.
Yeah. So I'm just working at a cancer clinic. I call myself the COVID bouncer. So basically
Hmm.
I ask questions to gauge whether or not they have any of those symptoms. I prevent visitors from going in, which is actually really hard since it's a cancer clinic and people going through treatment want their visitors there, but just it's
Yeah.
small. So we don't want that. And then, yeah, I'm just connecting with the doctors and things like that. And because of the building and where I am, I'm also like an info desk and I help with wheelchairs. I do it way more than my job description, but I've enjoyed it because I'm serving in in a different capacity than I did as a teacher. And that's really all I want to do with any of my professions is to serve some sort of community. So
So three questions, see if I can remember them all,
sure.
because I'm cold, old with a C. Number one, do the wheelchairs have handles on them?
They do because I've got to push them.
There you go. Okay. Number two, are you working remote or are you still going in? And before I forget, number three is, what skills do you bring from being a teacher to this position?
Yes, I am not remote, so it's in person. So I see all of the patients that come through, which is only true of me actually. And the what did I learn? I taught mostly middle schoolers and but I also ran up to seniors as well. And so some of the hostile patients that come in or visitors, I treat them as if I were treating my little middle schoolers who are complaining about dress code or something like that. Just very calm, no affect. I'm not being affected, I'm not being affected by their harsh words. I'm not raising my voice, and I just calmly tell them, the reason why I can't allow a visitor. And so that has actually helped me a great deal. Yeah.
Do you have your grappling gun to take care of them in the
Man,
event
I
that you need
wish.
to wrap them up and hustle them out?
Oh, I wish for some of them for sure.
And I have to ask you another question, which is a bit of a change of the subject, but I'm curious, what got you into comics and what got you into Barbara Gordon specifically,
Yeah.
whenever that was?
Yeah, so comics right before nap time, I guess I was a toddler or something like that. My mother used to read me these like Fleer baseball cards
Mm-hmm.
that had superheroes on them. So a superhero image on the front and then on the back stats, or it could be I know in particular there was one of like the Thing versus Hulk, or yeah, that's what it was, the Thing versus Hulk. And so it would talk about what issue that appeared in and what happened. So she would read me those. And I'm really close with my brother, and he was big into Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. So I think it all kind of came together. And then with Barbara Gordon, I think I had surgery on one of my feet like 2005 or something like that. And I have known of her from Batman the Animated Series, but during that I was just trying to find different reading materials and things to watch, and I got Batgirl Year One, and I fell in love with that character, and I just had a deep appreciation for her and just wanted to explore more. So ever since then, I just been trying to find new stories to read. And then I'm a big Dick and Bab shipper. So at one point I was trying to find all these issues that I could with the two of them in there. So I have like some really random issues in my long box. But that's really where it started, I think, was Batgirl Year One, which I feel like is apropos.
And by the way, a little bit of show and tell again. Apologies for people who are listening and not watching, but I have a little treat for you over here. Little original art.
Oh, wow.
Now, can you read the inscription? Does that show up?
Huntress, not Batgirl for for Jordan.
And
Man.
I don't know, right? Everybody calls me Gorf, which is like frog backwards, so now you won't forget it. But
Yeah.
I guess when I was a wee tot, I was a little more formal and wanted my real name on here. And I don't remember why Joe Staten, it's Staten, not Staten. It's not, he's
Hmm.
not named after the island, who created or co-created Huntress with Paul Levitz, the great Paul Levitz. Um, I don't know why he wrote that, Huntress, not Batgirl, but and I don't even know why I asked for Huntress specifically. You know what? I bet I know why, because he was the co-creator, and I thought, well, I got to ask for a character that he created.
Well, it's ironic
But you were talking
because of
about, yeah.
oh, I assume you got that before No Man's Land, right?
Oh gosh, yes. There's no year
Okay.
on it, but this must have been from the late 70s or early 80s.
Okay. It's just ironic
I'm
because
guessing.
she does
I mean,
become
Huntress was
Batgirl.
created in JSA.
Oh, okay.
By the way, you're right. Oh, by the way, you're absolutely right. You think I need
So
to
the
get a hold of
inscription's
Joe and ask
ironic,
him
yeah.
to amend that?
Uh-oh.
Wow. Thank you for pointing that out. That's really something.
Only because,
Yeah,
boy,
you're
was
right.
that
Maybe that's where I got the idea. I was staring at this all
maybe
these years.
a subliminal idea. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, so I think we're in the main
yeah, that
event.
right. So, oh,
Oh, did you
okay,
have
let's
something
go
else?
for it.
Okay, so I've invited Gorf
No,
on
no,
to
go ahead.
to talk three random issues, 36, 37, and 38 from Birds of
4 hours
Prey.
later, because Gorf won't be
Oh,
quiet.
is it? No, we're good. We're good. So I'm going to do the recap
And by the
and
way, I apologize. I keep talking over you, which I just did right now, because there seems to be a little bit of a delay. So I'll apologize to everybody. I don't mean to step over you. Go ahead.
that's
Recap.
fine. I'll have good space and things in between. So I'll do the recap and then we'll talk about things. Of course, we'll talk about the cover and the art. And I do have digital copies, so I can do the fancy screen share and we can talk about some things. But as a preface of this, I feel like these aren't super deep issues, so I don't know how much time we'll spend on them. But just to chat about them, I think would be good. And then bringing in your expertise just on tie-ins and events and things like that. So we will start with 36, which
Okay, just to be
was
clear, uh, I, I didn't work on these issues, folks. So I'm coming to it as a fan who, believe it or not, read these issues for the first time when Stella asked me to look at them. I never, because like I said before, when I left. And I just wanted to leave the runway clear for the next plane to land. So go ahead.
yep. So Birds of Prey number 36, Canary Caged, and this was the tie-in to Joker's Last Laugh, and it takes place after Joker's Last Laugh number 2, just FYI. Cover date 2001 of December, writer Chuck Dixon, penciler James Fry, inker Andrew Pepoy, colors Gloria Vasquez, and
Peepoy.
Pepoy. Thank you. Okay.
Peepoy. Yeah. Yeah.
This is why it's helpful to have a professional on
But
to correct how I pronounce names.
right. And I didn't realize that saying Peepoy would bring the house down and create complete silence. But there you have it.
No, I appreciate it. And then I don't normally, but because of our guests, I'm going to have the associate editor is Michael Wright and the editor is Matt Idelson. Okay, Black Canary is trapped inside Slabside Penitentiary, along with a host of villains infected by the Joker, making them even more crazed than ever. Her sonic cry is able to give most of them pause, but Joker sends Copperhead and Hellgrammite after her, as neither have ears. After dealing with them, she is briefly confronted by the Shadow Thief before meeting, to her great relief, Batman, Superman, and Mary Marvel, of all people. However, she soon spots that Marvel's lightning bolt is backwards, and the heroes are revealed to be an illusion created by Spellbinder, the first of the female villains affected by the Joker. Much later, Canary is comforted by Blue Beetle and Oracle, even though she was sucker punched by Spellbinder. She did later warn Nightwing and Batman of the Joker's wider reaching plans, effectively saving their lives. And then there's a bonus feature called The Minuscule Adventures of Mini Multi-Man. And Mini Multi-Man is thrown in Joker's pocket, but he cuts his way out only to potentially be lunch for Mr. Mind. So that is issue 36. I'll do a little boop. Okay, so I do like, and I'm glad that you are also an artist, so we can talk about that. So I like to talk about the covers and then, of course, the internal art. And this cover was by Ed McGuinness and Jason Martin, because we took a break from, and we'll get back to Phil Noto. Any thoughts on this particular cover? We've got Dinah with a shocked face, and we have some creepy crawlies around her. Kind of a standard cover.
My only thought is rather phallic.
Rather phallic. Oh, interesting.
Yeah, sorry.
No, don't apologize. With her or with the creepy crawlies because they're wrapping around her.
Yeah, I would not have approved a cover like this for that reason.
Oh, Oh, wow. This is exciting. I really like this. And then there's a little catchphrase at the bottom. I don't know. The early worm gets the bird. Yeah.
Right. Ouch.
Interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah. And I mean,
little
there's
little
that.
punny there.
There is that. I mean, now that you say it, of course, it's opened up something, but like the tentacle porn or whatever. And I think we've seen it with like Wonder Woman and things being wrapped around her legs. And you're like, what's going on right now? So, yeah, now that you've opened that up, I can totally see what you're talking about.
Yeah, and I have a feeling, I don't know, but I remember the way these things were done back then, that for a crossover, a lot of the covers were planned as a group.
Okay.
The editor didn't necessarily have complete control over what the cover image would be.
Okay.
That there was an imprint style that would be, well, imprinted on all those covers. I imagine that this had something to do with that. So I don't know if it was completely in Matt Idelson's control or not.
Gotcha.
But again, that I'm operating as a fan right now, although I made a professional constructive criticism as well. But I'll tell you why I think that the phallic issue is a problem in general, which is, and I don't want to get on a high horse here, if this is just one man's opinion, so take it with a grain of kosher salt. Comics are still unfairly maligned as a children's medium in North America. And when comics are featuring mainstream characters, particularly Batman characters, my strong feeling is that parents, by and large, are not savvy enough to be able to judge when something is for mature readers or not. They assume,
Mm,
oh, Batman. My kids like Batman. This is a Batman comic. I'll give it to my kids. So for something like this, I think that there would be some parents who would object to this kind of imagery. And I'm not saying that we should support any kind of what do you call it? Censorship. I don't know why I couldn't think of that word. That but I do think that we have to be sensitive to the audiences that get their hands on this material. And it's not our job to be a parent, but I think it is our job to be sensitive to the brand and the identity that comes across. And I'm sure the corporations are sensitive to that. Bat nipples, anybody? And I would always try to uh, and not always succeed, because if you look at some of the stuff that came out under my watch, you'll see that I'm a total hypocrite, and I own that. But I would try, especially with Birds of Prey, which I did have more or less total control over, or at least the buck stopped with me, or the bird stopped with me. I would try very hard to be respectful of female imagery. And that's why, for example, when we were redesigning the Black Canary costume, there were two things that I specifically wanted. One was I wanted her butt covered, because I don't see why a female superhero is running around in shorts in the first place. Why would you leave your legs exposed? I mean, you could get injured. Putting that aside, this is fantasy, and we take interesting creative liberties here. Like, for example, I love Gail Simone's justification for the fishnets returning. She figured the fishnets were some kind of armored fishnets, and were
mm,
giving her legs extra protection.
yeah.
I think that's wonderful. So that was one thing. I wanted the clothes to be reasonably modest. And again, not trying to censor, not trying to be a Puritan. I just felt that that was appropriate to the brand and the potential audience. And the second thing was, I wanted her to have a change of clothes, because I think you enjoy Batman Family the same way that I do, those whole Batman Family titles. And one of my favorite stories was Robin at Hudson University, who's on a lookout, and he's still wearing his Robin costume with the shorty shorts and the elf boots and all that. And he's in the snow, and he's trying to wrap his cape around him for warmth. And I'm thinking, dude, just put on a jacket, put on a pair of pants. I mean, really? So when Black Canary goes into cold weather, she should have a jacket to wear. She should have pants to keep her legs warm. A, it's logical, and
Mm-hmm.
B, people like style. People change clothes. Why does it all have to be this monolithic, she always wears this thing? No, she should wear what's appropriate to the situation. So anyway, there's a little bit of insight into why the costume was designed in multiple iterations.
Yeah. I'm also noticing now that that I'm at a distance from this comic that there's a silhouette of Joker behind her, which I didn't notice when I was reading it
Oh
in
yeah,
my digital. But I kind of, it would have been better to
that's
have
cool,
Spellbinder on
creative.
there because at least you could have a couple women. But I guess that was the big feint that Dixon did that you didn't know it was Spellbinder was
Right.
going to trick her out. So I guess you couldn't really do that. So that
Yeah,
was
yeah, that's that's
cool.
that's good, and credit to the editor for realizing that, and the cover editor. Curtis King, by the way, was the cover editor for a very long time, and I think somebody before was struggling to remember his name. Might have even been Chuck. So I want to give a shout out to Curtis, who did a magnificent job over so many years, uh, creating a seamless collection of covers that were both independently original and collectively all of a
Mm.
piece. So one of the unsung heroes of a long period in DC Comics history. And another person who deserves a serious shout out is Mark Chiarello, who is the was the vice president of design, if I don't remember his exact title, but one of the most intuitive, brilliant designers in comics history, and he had a hand in taking things to the next level when he came on board. He's also a great person, and he looks just like Mark Hamill, so
Oh,
he's got a lot of stuff going for him.
man, lucky guy. Well,
Okay,
also,
we're
yeah, well, I was just gonna
go ahead.
continue with the art. With Dinah, I noticed that her tatas, as they call them, are a bit larger and more pronounced in this particular issue. And I was gonna ask also the ending with the terry cloth robe and being just, I don't know.
Oh my gosh,
But
when I
I
saw that,
wondered
I
if
couldn't
you
believe
had
it.
any say with the artists. Like, did you ever ask them to scale back cup sizes at all with any of the characters when you were on this particular book? Or did Chuck?
Not as much as I wish I did. Let's just put
Okay.
it that way. And it's not because there aren't a large-breasted women or small-breasted women and so
Sure.
on and so forth. Like yeah, Power Girl. Uh, they took what was a terribly misogynistic a portrayal and turned it into a story asset, and or at least tried to. And over here, I think that in the pose of Black Canary with her very loosely opened terry cloth robe,
Yeah.
I actually think that the artist wasn't trying to do something titillating. I think that instead the artist was drawing from classic art.
Mm,
I see like a Da Vinci type pose in
mm,
this. I thought, well, here's a great opportunity to draw something artistic and illustrative, and take it, and also drawing folds in material is one of the hardest things to pull off and do well.
mm.
Staz Johnson, the best folds guy in the industry. That
Oh.
guy can draw folds in drapery like nobody else. And I haven't been in touch with Staz, regrettably, in a long time, but I used to call him the trousers guy, both because he would call them trousers, being from across the pond, and because, boy, did he make a realistic looking set of pants. So over here, I think it was the artist really kind of doing something beautiful and artistic in a classical way. And although it's really out of place storytelling wise, it's quite a lovely drawing.
Yeah.
Anyway, regarding the breast sizes and all that sort of stuff, yeah, there's an example right there where you've got. I don't want to go into specifics. I mean, it's easy to joke about this stuff, but
Sure.
um, the uh, the artists are. Let me switch topics to give you an example. In your No Man's Land podcast, you were talking about Cassandra Batgirl
Mm.
and how she was drawn as a realistically proportioned teenager in some issues, and then this bombastic sex goddess in other issues.
Yeah.
Why was that? You'd go from one to the other, and you get whiplash.
Mm.
And the answer was because Mike Diodato was an artist who drew in a very exaggerated superhero-y way. And every character he drew was like that. And he was very popular for that kind of art style. And we let Mike Diodato be who Mike Diodato was, and people loved that stuff. And within the context of his own artwork, it made sense. In the context of the whole, it may have been a little bit jarring, but nevertheless, we gave them a little bit of freedom. And then you had other artists who would draw her more age, I don't want to say appropriate, but more like the age that she was, and more lithe and slender and smaller in cup size, the way, I don't remember how old she is, 16, 17 years old, the way somebody like that really would be. So there is a wide variety, and there's a place to let artists have their artistic freedom. Where I would draw the line is just simply the absurd. And when you have one breast going in the left and one flying to the right, you know, or they're jutting up in the air to poke your eyes out, you know, for me that's just like, come on, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
So I'm only objecting to things that I think are absurd, rather than things that are fair artistic interpretations.
Okay.
How's that?
Yeah.
And this picture that you're showing, by the way, we've got proportion issues going on in this drawing of Black Canary. Her head is too big. The right arm is huge compared to the left arm. The torso is tiny compared to the legs. Now I realize we have superhero proportions, and in superhero proportions, they're not realistic proportions. I forget what it is, but it's 7, 8, sometimes 9 heads to every body. I forget what it is. Whereas a realistic proportion is 4 or 5 heads to a body, using the head as a measurement. And over here, I mean, despite the fact that the head is too big, you still have a crazy out of whack, out of proportion figure, and it's not very pleasant looking either. I don't know what happened. Maybe, likely, the artist was in a rush. You know, there was a deadline. You're in a huge crossover, and the penciler's flying through it. I mean, there are no backgrounds here, which probably gives me another hint that things were running really behind, which happens on a crossover. So again, I want to give the benefit of the doubt to the artist who was trying his best under tough deadline circumstances. There's another missile silo anatomy over there.
I was like, what's happening there?
Right, and then you've got
a waist.
Right, and then you've got the behind shot with, you know, 2 full moons, so you just can't win.
Yeah, James Fry.
Anyway,
he's not my favorite on this one. On Birds of Prey, I mean.
I think James Fry did a run on Star Trek.
Oh, interesting.
Like the 80s Star Trek comic, and my recollection is his storytelling was terrific. His likenesses were wonderful. I remember him doing a really great job. So it just may be that, you know, he let his fanboy fly a little bit on this one.
Gotcha. So this issue, I will have done Joker's Last Laugh with another guest. So we see some of this happen in that main story, but we really get her point of view. It fills in the gaps of some scenes in that story. We get more time with her. I feel like she's given more agency, just that she's able to fight. She's kind of knocked out quickly in the other one. And I was wondering, for you as an editor of events or crossovers, do you try to make it so that there aren't repeat scenes and tie-ins? Do you like to have things connect, but not, you know, replay the same scenes over again? Or how much overlap is there given to the readers, since some readers might not pick up the event, but just like if I were buying Birds of Prey at this time, maybe I'm just getting Birds of Prey, but I'm not getting Joker's Last Laugh. How do you balance that?
Right. And by the way, if I was on the phone right now with Scott and Darren, the Bat Guys, we would have said Jim balanced that.
Oh.
Because we do a lot of artist puns.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
But that's another James fish to fry.
Oh boy. Oh boy.
Yeah, well, Paul Levitt's at that. That was a bad one. We go on forever, and I will spare you that right now. You ask an excellent question, and it's a much larger, all-encompassing question than you think. Because if you consider that a crossover series is being edited by a whole cadre, a whole staff of editors, and being created by a global confederation of artists, writers, and artists, you realize the monumental task of trying to make it all fit together. And especially when you combine it into trades, things that may not have been obvious at the time become super obvious.
Mm.
You know, oh, we hit this beat too many times, or we didn't hit this beat enough, or we were clear about this, or we weren't clear about that. It's really tough. But if, as Denny would say, we do our jobs right, then you have all the information you need within the issue that you're reading in order to understand what's going on. And even though these stunts, as we used to call it, I don't know if they call it that anymore, these stunts were definitely created to motivate readers to buy comics that they otherwise wouldn't buy because they want to be completists.
Mm-hmm.
And we're not doing that because we want to take their money. I mean, obviously we want to feed our families and be profitable. We're doing it because we want to expose them to other reading experiences, other characters and worlds and so forth that they otherwise might not pick up. And hopefully by doing that, a few things happen. One is they enjoy the story more fully. Two is they begin to follow that series. And three is a series that may not have been doing well will get a little extra gas in the tank from its association with the more popular, well-selling series. So from a continuity standpoint, everything you need to know needs to be in that one issue.
Okay.
Marvel used to do recaps at the top of each splash page.
Mm-hmm.
You know, who the X-Men are, how many times did I read, and Wolverine with his unbreakable adamantium claws, right? Over and over and over again for hundreds of issues. And more recently, they would put it on the inside front cover, and that would be the summary. And now they're getting even more creative. But Marvel was always great about it. With DC, the philosophy was less about having that descriptive prose at the beginning that would give you the setup, would give you the context. It was more about working in the details that you need to know within the context of the story, which relates to what you ask about, which is what about repeating scenes? I can tell you as an editor, if I felt that a scene needed to be repeated, either because it came by executive fiat, they said, my bosses would say, these things must be shown for whatever reason, or it's because we felt internally that storytelling-wise, it's better to repeat a scene. Hopefully you show it from a different perspective. So instead of it being shot for shot exactly the same thing, you're showing it from a different angle. I'm going to jump over to Marvel for a second. But one of the most wonderful examples of that is, for those of you who have watched the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, and I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, have, in Civil War, you introduce Spider-Man. And you see it from the Avengers perspective. And then you go to the first Spider-Man movie, what's it called? Far From Home? Homecoming, thank you. That was the second one. Homecoming, and you have this marvelously engaging and creative recreation of the scene because it was important for the audience to understand what had happened, but they didn't want to repeat it verbatim. So instead, they did it from a very teenager point of view. I'm not going to spoil it here. If you haven't seen it, go and watch it. A very teenager point of view, which gave you all the information, but not by repeating it, by reinventing it, by elevating it, by showing you a different angle. And I, as an editor, I think that's what I would try to do.
Gotcha. Thank you, because I wasn't sure.
And I chose Spider-Man because I know you're a big Spidey fan. So there you go.
I do like the Spider-Man. Yeah, absolutely. You know, I don't have too much to say about this particular story. Do you have anything else you want to do with this issue? Anything else you would say?
The only thing I would say is good going, creative team. It's tough to do these tie-ins, and I'm sure you gave it your all, and whatever constructive criticism we're giving you is out of love.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think this works obviously since Chuck is writing Joker's Last Laugh and this, because you see the scene where Dinah's not using her now fully healed canary cry in Joker's Last Laugh, and Babs is wondering, why aren't you? And then here it's answered that she's actually saving it for something big and she's a bit nervous about it. So it
Which is a
works
cool
that
little
Chuck's new.
touch.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But I think if it
Oh,
were
yeah.
anyone else, it might have slipped through the cracks. But
Yeah.
because
Well,
Chuck
look,
is doing everything, yeah.
we're not talking about Chuck, and I can't give him enough accolades. As a writer, he brings a unique blend of, and he makes it look so easy, but it comes from so much hard work and experience. A unique blend um, of plot arcs and what I like to call the emotional arc. And I don't
Mm,
know if I coined that phrase or if I got it from somewhere else. I was already using it in the 90s. And that to me was what was at the core of Birds of Prey. Every story had to have both. You had to have your action, your plot. This happens, that happens, we beat people up and all that. But also you had to have the emotional arc. The characters had to go on a journey inside their heads as well as physically. And it's the emotional connection that we make with the characters that keeps us coming back. Yes, you buy in for the action, but you come back for the emotional arc.
yeah.
And one of the things that I think has been lost in all the iterations of Birds of Prey and other media, the television show, well, I can't speak to the movies, so let me just talk about the television show. And by the way, Jeanette Kahn, the former president of DC, she hired me at the time to write the Bible that pitched the show to become picked up the television
Interesting.
show. And the thing that they missed was the heart. Was that okay? So I have to go into this. I think I touched on this in the panel you were at, the San Diego Con Birds of Prey panel, but it's an important thing over here. The genesis for Birds of Prey for me was that I wanted to see women, female superhero characters treated like I thought women, in my own, limited male way, but good writers could write anybody or anything. So unlike what many people on the internet will tell you, and I'm sure to get lots of Rotten Tomatoes thrown at me, but if I could write a green-skinned alien completely out of my imagination that doesn't exist, then surely, don't call me Shirley, I can write a character based on 50% of the population that's around me all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, putting aside my not stand soapbox. My point here is that when I created Birds of Prey, I wanted it to be very relatable and have that verisimilitude of the relationships that women that I had observed have, which is they share their thoughts, they share their feelings, they'll gossip and, have fun and all of that, like all of us do. But there is an emotional depth to a close relationship that women have where they will, that I don't think many men have or feel comfortable having, at least in the classic sense. I think we've come a long way as a society, and I'm not going to get into all that. You got to remember, we're in the 1990s right now. Hopefully I've evolved since then. I'm trying very hard not to get myself into trouble with the things that I'm saying, and I'm doing a very poor job of it. And the relationship that I based it on, funny enough, was the relationship from the first Die Hard movie. And for those of you who don't remember, you had a cop, John McClane, who's thrown into a crazy situation where he's inside of a skyscraper and cut off from everybody. And the only help that he has is the advice being given by the African-American cop who's on the outside and speaking to him through the walkie-talkie. And they never met. Throughout the entire story, they never met. And they formed this wonderful relationship where one is the brains and one is the brawn. And I thought, well, here we have two characters. One is emotionally scarred from a rape in the Mike Grell issues, which is the reason she lost the canary cry. And one is physically disabled in a wheelchair shot by the Joker. How interesting would it be to pair these people up, but to never have them meet and add that tension or even that tension release? It's much easier to talk to somebody that you're not tangibly in touch with. Gesundheit. It's much easier to talk to somebody freely,
Thank you.
like Charlie from Charlie's Angels, maybe. It's a neat trope of the genre,
Yeah.
the mysterious boss. And one would be helping the other together. They would be helping each other to overcome their individual problems. And I knew after a period of time they would eventually meet, come face to face. But we kept it going as long as we could, which I thought was a lot of fun. Just likewise, we knew eventually that eventually it happened with the second series, that we'd have to expand the team to encompass more than just two females. And Gail Simone on steroids, brought it to an unbelievable nadir. And this brings me back to Chuck Dixon. He could do the emotion and feather light, but with such depth and such feeling, and again, verisimilitude, where you just loved these characters. That there is no bad Chuck Dixon comic. There's only good and great. And even in an issue like this, where it's a crossover and there are all kinds of other competing priorities in a crossover comic, it's still great Chuck. It's got all the action, it's got all the heart, it's got the emotional arc, it's got the character arc, it's got the plot arc, it's got suspense, the twist, it's got all of it. And that's just, I can't give Chuck enough credit for that. That's why his Robin was just so wonderful.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yeah, so yay, Chuck.
Indeed. Well, I'm going to give this a rating, but I don't expect you to, just because you might feel awkward to do that.
Thank you. I do feel awkward, so
yes,
I'm going to take an out on that. Go
That's
ahead. But
fine.
wait, don't you have to decide what kind of rating it is?
Yes, it's out of 10 pink terry cloth robes.
Oh my gosh. Open or closed?
Oh, I would prefer it closed, but
okay,
yeah,
terry cloth robes. Yes,
I think I'm going to give it a 6. So probably the lowest I've given Chuck, but I didn't like Joker's Last Laugh as much as I've liked other Dixon things. So I'll just say that. But
that's fair. He's a man. Yeah. He can take it.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So we'll
and a
move
6
on.
is great. I mean, I haven't heard all of your podcasts, but I've only heard somebody ever rate something below a 5 once. So you guys are, you guys are very generous graders.
We try to be optimistic and positive.
I want you to be my teacher, because then I know I'll always get an A.
Not always, but I am.
Not always.
Yeah.
No, work with me here. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so we're moving on to Birds of Prey 37. So now we'll be out of it, though there are some repercussions that we'll talk about with the Babs in the Dick scenes. So this is Red, Black, and Blue. January 2002 is the cover date. Writer Chuck Dixon, penciler Marcos Martin. So the Dream Team is back. Inker Alvaro Lopez, colorist Wildstorm, associate editor Michael Wright, and editor Matt Idelson. Blue Beetle, Black Canary, and Robin pursue Jokerized escapee Genome, taking him/it out more quickly than expected. They then set out in pursuit of the Condiment King, a little-known villain last seen when defeated many years ago by the original Robin and Batgirl, as seen in Batgirl Year One. When they catch up with him, however, they find that he's become somewhat more dangerous than his previous incarnation. His condiments are now able to cause serious injury for those unlucky enough to come into contact with them, including deadly anaphylactic shock. And he plans to set off a huge mustard bomb, which will cause much devastation. Blue Beetle comes to the rescue with a convenient barrel of milk, because they're at an ice cream shop, which is able to neutralize spicy foods quickly. He also uses his bug to get the mustard bomb to safety before it explodes. Meanwhile, Oracle tries to get through to Dick, but he continues to act in a hostile manner, thinking no one else can understand what he's going through. So that is Birds of Prey.
Okay, well, that was an excellent catch up.
It's certainly, I hope so. Okay, let us do
that was my Condiment King pun.
Oh, I didn't catch it. I let you down. I'm so sorry.
No, that's okay. Because I saw Chuck wrote the old relish joke in there. and
Oh.
figured I would. I was trying to find a pun quickly, with mustard, but I don't got it.
It says it's paused. Can you see my little
it
screen?
and no, it's still
Hmm.
pinwheeling over here. But I will say that I was really impressed by the creativity Chuck showed in evolving the Condiment King character into a really scary and genuinely frightening
I
villain.
know. Absolutely. Yeah. Um, so
He did his
let's
research too, the spicy foods and the milk,
clearly, yeah.
butter.
And the what's that rating called? Or the scale, the now I can't remember what it's called of the spicy foods. I can't, well,
Oh yeah,
yeah, where he's talking about that because I thought
I don't
maybe
know.
there'll be a ghost pepper. Well, I'll find it. But let's first talk about. So now we've got the amazing Phil Noto. He is back, and of course, we'll
I
talk about Marcos
can't
Martin as well.
believe he didn't do a villain called Ghost Pepper.
Oh, that would have been good. Yeah.
Although that might be better for Iron Man.
Oh, ghost pepper. Interesting. Yeah, because of Pepper Potts.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Just want to be sure I was tracking with
Right.
you. What do you think
Right. Well,
about?
we're talking about this issue. I'm just milking it for all it's worth. Yeah.
No, no worries. What do you think about this particular cover here? United against the deadliest of foes. We got Robin, Black Canary, and in the foreground we have Blue Beetle.
Phil Noto can do no wrong.
I would agree.
He's just uh, his coloring. Oh, I'm a big coloring guy. I think coloring is so important. And way back when, we had limitations on how we did our coloring, which is a whole episode in and of itself. But Gloria Vasquez is somebody that I cherry picked, and I begged them to give us Digital Chameleon to do our separations. You guys probably even know what separations mean. Um, but I'm glad to see that team carried through, and Albie de Guzman on lettering. I don't know if he's on this issue, but he was on. Yeah, definitely, that's Albie's lettering. As an editor, you get to the point where you can see lettering and know who did it. This is
Oh,
before
okay.
computer lettering, when it was all
Wow.
hand done. Um, Albie, great guy, and Gloria and whatever. So great coloring on the interior, utilizing great atmospherics and color choices and blending to the degree that technology back then would let you. It's ironic that we're talking about this on a comic story that's called Red, Black, and Blue.
Yeah.
But getting back to Phil Noto for a second, just he's just a marvelous artist.
Mm.
Um, I don't think this cover is terribly dynamic from the perspective of action or anything like that, but his execution of anything, even just a still figure, is just so wonderful to look at that who cares? It's Phil. I'll take it.
Yeah.
If I had to give one constructive criticism, it would be, and I'm looking at this very small on a phone screen. You know what? I bet this isn't the case with. I'm going to get into the weeds here. Hang on, let me pull up this cover on my own computer screen so I can see. Okay, yeah, it's not an issue with the thing that I was going to point out as much as I thought it was. But see how Black Canary's glove is of that. It's of that. Oh gosh, what was it? It was Y30, B70, M60K10 tone,
Okay.
roughly.
Yeah.
And I've just called up the CMYK
Mm-hmm.
components,
Yep.
because back in the day when you were an editor and you looked at color, you had to be able to identify. Usually we use a chart, but I did a lot of coloring back then, and I memorized the color chart. And now I have this wonderful little parlor trick where I can look at any color around me and tell you what its CMYK composition is. It'd be pretty close to right. And let me tell you, folks, I was so popular with the ladies at parties with that
I'm
parlor
sure.
trick. The right people would go, there's what was the villain, the Color King, what was the quilt, master quilt, what was
Oh,
color quilt,
yeah. Yep,
uh,
yep, yep.
right? I was like that villain, but at parties.
Oh
Anyway,
gosh.
this bit isn't working. I'm going to move on. So my point here is you've got that bluish gray glove right in front of the bluish gray portion of the costume.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have suggested altering the color just slightly, or perhaps putting a little more shadow on the edge of that to separate it more. Now, he does have a shadow falling from the hand onto the thigh, and that
Mm-hmm.
definitely helps to pop it forward. But Phil does modeling, and I feel like there should be just a little bit of modeling on that so it's not as flat as it is. Such a minor nitpick, but if you want to get into the details here, there you go.
Sure.
I'm not sure what's going on with that hand in the background.
Yeah, I
Looks
noticed
like
that.
there's like an arm with a squiggly on that. That's a little weird. And now I'm going to teach you about what we call the bad tangent.
Oh.
Folks, here we go. This is Comics 401, Advanced Comics for you. And I believe I have to give credit to Mike Carlin for teaching me this. Do you see how, I don't know if you can zoom in on your screen, but can you zoom in on Black Canary's right arm, which is over Robin's
Tim Drake.
left leg,
Yeah.
his left thigh?
I
Tim
can
Drake, yeah.
see if I
Can
can.
you get in there on that?
Let's see if I can zoom in. I'm not sure if I can.
Okay, well, folks, you can zoom in on your
Yeah.
own screen also.
Yeah.
Take a look at, I'm going to ask you to follow the line of Robin's left thigh as it intersects with Black Canary's glove. And that's what it's doing. It's intersecting with it. That's called a bad tangent, when one straight line rubs up against another straight line. In comics, you never want to do that. You want to have overlap, because what happens is if you just stare at that, it looks like she's got a pair of scissors on her hands that's wrapped around his thigh. But in fact, that hand is supposed to be popping forward from that thigh. And the way to do that is you want to overlap those lines. You don't want them to be contiguous. And this is very important for ballooning also. Folks, when you are placing your balloons, don't put two balloons rubbing one right up against the other. Overlap them a little bit. And likewise, don't put the balloons so that they are rubbing right against artwork, like a balloon that's rubbing right against the edge of a rooftop where a kid is playing with his Legos. Yes!
It came back. It came back.
You don't want to do that either, because then it looks like the balloon is literally sitting on top of the object instead of being a completely separate element that does not serve as an artistic, well, it doesn't serve a purpose in the storytelling and the art and the illustrations. It is artistic in its own way and does serve a purpose. So remember that, folks. No bad tangents. And if I see you with a bad tangent, I would take out my ruler and whack you on the wrist.
Yikes. What's your opinion on the cover should, I don't telegraph maybe, or speak more about what the story is inside? Like, for instance, for the most part, I mean, it's really about this team up, but we are missing Condiment King. Would that have been something that you would have wanted on there potentially?
That's a good question. Well, you don't know. That's why you're asking me the question. There was a little self eye roll for myself there for being silly. The purpose of a cover is to market the book. So if there is something going on the inside that you think is going to be a powerful sales tool, then use it. But if for whatever reason you have an image that you think is going to be more powerful without it, then don't use it. So it's really up to the editors to decide what they think is best. Gotcha. And probably in a case like this, they told Phil, all right, these three characters are in it, and here's the script. Now just be brilliant. And he decided this is what he wanted to draw. Yeah. And it's beautiful. So we like it.
Absolutely, yeah.
What's your opinion?
What's my opinion on it? Yeah, I mean, Phil Noto, I agree with you. He can do no wrong. I do to a certain extent. I just remember, Silver Age, they would literally take almost a page or a panel out of the story and put it on the cover. And so you can tell like, oh, this is about, this is what's going to happen. And so I like it. It's, dynamic, at least that they're moving. And it's an interesting team up for sure. But just because on the inside, when you get to Condiment King and it's just like nostalgia, I would have loved to have seen him. But again, just going back to the argument for 36, that could have been showing Dixon's hand, and perhaps he didn't want to show that he was going to have Condiment King pop up. So.
Yeah, by the way, Chuck, you missed an opportunity here, because what I would have done was I would have had 2 pages side to side with Condiment King rubbing mayonnaise on a sandwich, so that we could have called it a 2-page sandwich spread.
Oh my. Oh my.
You missed an opportunity, buddy. Sorry I wasn't there for you.
Oh dear.
Okay, so I have 2 follow-up questions for you.
Sure.
Number one is the same follow-up question that you had, which was, what is your opinion? Should the cover reflect? Is it better for the cover to reflect what's actually going on inside or not?
I like for it to do that. Yes. That's one of the grievances, is a bit heavy with the current, as of 2001, Batgirl title with Cassandra Cain, just that they're sort of stock. They're just like, she's doing interesting things, but it has nothing to do with the story. And I kind of like a hint of what's going on in the story, even if it's maybe to make things more dramatic, and this is going to happen, but it's not as bad as it seems, that sort of thing. So I do like to have a hint of what's going on or going to happen.
I'll ask my second question in a second, but something just occurred to me. Did you get I don't know if DC still does it, but they do what they call coloring books, but basically they take the covers for a character and reproduce them in black and white, and they have a whole book collection of these things. Have you seen those?
Yeah, I have the one for Batgirl, actually.
So it's just stunning. I mean, I so geek out over looking at just the black and white line artwork. And I'd be curious at another time to go through with you those covers and analyze them from the perspective of, does it tell the story of, can we tell what story it's going to tell inside the book? Or is it just a standalone image that we find compelling and we would buy it anyway?
Yeah.
So divorced of the interior pages, how well do these covers work?
Yeah.
And by the way, you don't have to do it with me. I recommend that as another episode with your fellow conspirators in the Batman network. Okay, so here's my second question. I'm going to put you on the spot here.
Sure.
But you've just taken Gorf's comic book 401 class, at least the first class.
Sure.
I want you to find for me the other bad tangent on this cover.
Interesting. Is it Blue Beetle's armpit and Dinah's leg there?
That's a good thought, but that's overlapping, and that's a good thing. So you have to find something that is meant to look like it's in front of another object, but it's because it's literally rubbing up against it, instead it looks unintentionally like it's sitting or touching that object. I'll give you a hint. Look above the word United.
Above? Is it Robin's gauntlet in the background?
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay.
Yep. You got it. So Robin's fingers are touching the doorway or the parchment or whatever that thing is supposed to be. And I don't think that's intentional. And I would have instructed the artist either keep the hand completely over the background or overlap the foreground a little bit. Now, here's something interesting. And again, for those of you who are just listening and not watching this, I apologize, but you can probably go online and find the cover of Birds of Prey number 37, which is what we're referencing. Look at the eye of the cover text, United. Whoever laid out this text knew what they were doing, because there's no bad tangent with this eye. Look how easily it could have been shifted just a couple of pixels to the right, and the eye would have formed a terrible bad tangent with the background. But whoever laid this out knew better than that and fixed it. So these are the subtleties. I mean, we're really getting in the weeds here.
Yeah. These
are the subtleties of what comic book professionals look for. And and there's one other thing I would have done. Can you find the error, the costume error on Robin?
Oh,
This always drove me nuts. And I realized it became an interpretive thing at a certain point where artists would feel free to design the costume or interpret the costume the way they wanted. But
is
what
it
is
the R?
that's a
Is
good
the R
question.
correct?
The R may not be completely correct. I would have to go back and look. I don't remember well enough, but I do remember that the zipper is supposed to have 4 zippers, not 3.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
You want continuity? There you go. Now I'm not going to get into on his belt how many wedges
Yeah.
there are. Oh my God, I'm not going there. Okay, we're too into the weeds here. Let's get back out of the weeds and
Yeah,
have some
sure.
fun talking about the story.
Yeah, so transitioning from of the cover to the actual story, we've got these two male characters that are just sort of guest starring on the Birds team. Do you have any personal opinions on whether men belong on the Birds of Prey team, either temporary or as full-fledged members?
Temporary, fine. Full-fledged members, no,
Okay.
no men. Sorry, this is a ladies' club.
Yeah. I mean, that's what I agree with you. Yeah. And Ted's been in a couple times, so I feel like it's really easy to write him in. And Tim has a great relationship with Barbara, so I feel like these two work. But to see him as full-fledged, I couldn't see that.
Yeah, no, bring them in, bring them out. That's fine. But ultimately, I mean, I'll be, and I know there are people who will disagree with me on this, and that's fine. Um, Ultimately, there are plenty of places to have team ups with men and women. This is the rare oasis to this day in comics where it's all women. And and just from a storytelling perspective, this affords us the ability to tell stories that we otherwise might not have. The school that you taught at was separate genders or mixed?
Mixed.
Okay, because Latin, I figure, you never know, it might have been a girls' school. So anybody who's had experiences and I'm not telling you anything that the research hasn't really shown, but when you take men out of the equation in a girls' school, girls tend to what am I trying to say here? They flower. They feel less intimidated to act or be a certain thing because there aren't boys around to impress. And Stella, before I put my foot any further in my mouth, am I speaking accurately here, or am I off base?
No, I think that's true. Yeah, because they don't feel the need to impress somebody else. I think there is still a complex relationship with other females, and there's that competition and trying to fit in and everything. But yeah, removing that male factor, I think, does change. There's less pressure potentially.
When you interacted with your students, and for that matter, when you interact with your friends or your colleagues or anything else like that, do you see situations where de facto or on purpose it's all women and you feel a change? Or it depends on the group of people, not the gender?
Oh, no, absolutely. I mean, this job actually, I'm basically only surrounded by females. The only males are the doctors, and it's almost like a breath of fresh air because at my school there were less women than there were men, and it's just it's an interesting dynamic getting mansplained, and you don't really feel like being mansplained and things like that. So yeah, absolutely, there's a change even as an adult with men involved versus all women.
Yeah, by the way, as that's exactly what I'm feeling right now, that I'm risking mansplaining with what I'm talking about. And I can already hear Scott Peterson listening to this podcast and going, Gorf, 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 stop it. So sorry, Scott. I wish you were here. Maybe you'll have the 3 of us on at the same time, and then, Scott will be there to protect me. Anyway, so story-wise, you picked an interesting page.
Yeah. Well, just the nostalgia and getting to Condiment King and seeing this with you got Dixon and Martine back together again, flashing back to Batgirl Year One, and of course you had those
Mm-hmm.
emotional conversations with everything seems to be coming together. There's that cleanup, of course, with the Jokerized villain, so it makes sense, but it's also connecting. I feel like the big moment of this issue is the big moment is the big moments are the
You pulled a Gorf.
conversations, yeah, between Dick and Babs, and so everything is sort of wrapped around there because she's remembering this guy, and then that flashes to Dick and trying to
Yeah.
help her out. But yeah, it was fun to see him again, and yeah, not be this C-lister. I guess he's a C-lister, but he's just more dangerous now.
Yeah, like I said before, I thought the reinvention of the character was really creative on Chuck's part. And over here, it's nice to see Robin with the shorty shorts again.
Yep.
And since it's not snowing, I'll allow it.
Yeah. What did you think the tone was of this? Because I mean, it seems serious. We'll get to, I do want to talk about that. But then there are moments where, is it this one? Let's see here. Oh, poison ivy popping it. Where, Ted leaps over and guzzles it down. So it's like a light tone as well. Do you think there is this mixed tonal feeling, or should we be thinking it's more serious? What do you think?
Well, that's the wonderful thing about the hat trick that Chuck pulls off. He can balance different tones within his writing. And I think the artwork does a nice job also, and particularly the coloring does a nice job of cueing us as to what emotional state we should be in this particular part of the story. So if you go back a page or two when you have the Babs stuff, I think it's a little further back than that. Yeah, that. So take a look at what the colorist is doing, and actually it's the artist as well, but the colorist is really teeing off from it. All of the blacks, all the negative spaces. This is really artwork that is speaking in the negative space, not the positive space. Do you know what that means, by the way? What negative space refers to artistically?
Yes.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, negative space is the spaces between the objects. So when you have, the best example of negative space was the thing that Stella, you pointed out on the previous cover, that the shape of the tentacles was forming a Joker's head in the negative space. So go back to issue number 36 and look at that, and you will see a prime example, a very clever example of negative space. And over here, that the use of negative space is cueing us that we're in a more serious space.
Yeah. Whew. And it's a heavy conversation. Just to catch people up, if you've not seen that part, but Dick kills the Joker at one point, but then the Joker comes back to life, but he's still really held up on the killing of
Spoiler
the
alert.
Joker. I know. Well, hopefully they would have already seen that, unless they're just coming on to see you. But
Right.
yeah,
There's no
Barbara's.
spoiler alerts for 20-year-old comics.
That's true.
Folks.
Also,
Sorry.
yeah.
Statute of limitations is up.
Yeah, but I feel like these are just two really beautiful scenes, with her really trying to talk to him, and they're hard scenes too. I mean, this one's just her conversing to an answering machine, and then the other one, which I'll flip to, is hard just to see his reaction to it. But I call Batman Bat Jerk a lot, depending on what his actions are.
Yeah.
And it was great to see that she says, I'm not casting any stones, Dick. No one is, not even Bruce. Because of all the people that I would think would say, no, that's a bad thing there, Dick would have been Bruce. And so the fact that he's on his side, I won't call him Bat Jerk this issue. But yeah. Oh,
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think Chuck has a good sensitivity towards riding the razor's edge with Bruce's personality in that way.
yeah.
It's tough. It's tough to write a dark brooding character who doesn't come off as a jerk.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's a whole part of No Man's Land to discuss about that, which we won't get into right now.
Yeah.
But if you want to see, I think, one of the best examples of this razor's edge, of this balancing act between the Dark Knight and his more human side, go read, I think it was Detective Comics 471 through 477. It's the Steve Englehart, Marshall Rogers run.
Mm.
It's the one that introduced the laughing fish.
Oh, okay.
To my mind, outside of the comics I worked on, the best Batman story ever told.
Okay.
So wonderful. And one of my favorite scenes, I can't pull it out for you right now, but I'm looking at a Marshall Rogers original that he drew for me.
Mm.
To my mind, one of the best scenes, and a scene that you'll love and I won't spoil, is the interaction between Robin the Teen Wonder and Batman in the Batcave. And
Oh,
after you read it, come back and tell me that that wasn't wonderful, because
okay.
it's so brief and it's so wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll come back. And yeah, this is the final scene between them where physically she's there talking to him. As far as I know, there aren't any handles, but there are in the next issue, sir. I did point them out. But she's, yeah, reaching out to him empathetically because she's been there. She hated the Joker. She wanted him dead.
Sure.
Um, and then he says that he disgraced himself in both uniforms. And then the big thing is no more surprise visits, Babs. Don't make me sorry. I put this in an elevator in this building. I thought, yikes, this is rough. So this is a hard little bump that they've
Yeah.
got in their relationship. Probably for the first time, the hardest one they've had.
Yeah, I think that was kind of low of Dick, but
Yeah.
he's in a very bad place, and
Mm-hmm.
it signifies that. And one
Absolutely.
other thing about the wheels are not on the right angle.
Oh, interesting.
They're horizontal. Excuse me, they're vertical. They're vertical.
Okay.
Horizontal, that'd be interesting.
Woo!
You
Yeah.
wouldn't get far with that kind of wheelchair.
Yeah.
Too soon.
Guess it'd be like I don't know, one of those things they use to go in
It
the
would be a
bayou.
hovercraft.
Yeah, there you go, hovercraft. Yep.
Yeah,
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 and then I just said that that whole scene was ironic given recent events in Batgirl where he asks for forgiveness and her to relate to him or reach out to him, and she's basically no, which is not the Barbara Gordon I know. So this was
yeah.
interesting to read. But
And I'm just wondering, in that penultimate panel, why is the ground checkerboard?
oh, the hallway,
Yeah,
I don't know.
not that we've ever done a map, at least I don't think we have, of the clock tower.
Mm-hmm.
So what? That's the other thing. In No Man's Land, I specifically created maps because that the story needed it, lent itself to it, and I thought, wouldn't it be nifty to finally know where things went? And to have an actual geography. It added to, here's the word again, verisimilitude of Gotham City for that particular storyline. But it
Mm-hmm.
was never meant to be the last word on the geography. And I'm pleased that over time, people have taken liberties and redesigned it and added other neighborhoods and changed things around. Although I do have a laugh that the very opening scene, here's a deep dive for you, the very opening scene of the Birds of Prey TV show, from, what was it, Fox, the WB, whatever it was
I
on back
think the
then,
WB. Yep.
right, was my map done 3D.
Oh,
So they
interesting.
started with my map and then went into the story from there.
Okay.
The special effects don't hold up, but there you go. And by the way, when I say okay, I came up with the idea perhaps, but a whole team realized it.
Mm.
There's a great Greg Rucka story around that map that we'll tell at another time. So many stories, so little time.
I'm sure.
Okay, let's
Yeah.
go on.
Yeah. I think this is all I had for this particular issue. Is there anything else you would want to talk about this one?
Yeah, just a couple things. One is Marcos Martin. So here's a
Okay.
funny little story, and it shows how, once again, I am often wrong. And the story is that Paul Levitz, who I think was the vice president at the time, came around with samples of an artist and said, you ought to use this guy. I think he's promising. And I looked at the samples and thought, this guy is 6 months away. By the way, that's what we used to always say. When somebody, we could see they had potential,
Mm-hmm.
but there was still some amateurishness to their artwork.
Okay.
It hadn't quite reached the level of a professional level yet. We used to always say they're 6 months away. In other words, go back, work for another 6 months, and then come back to me again. So we thought this guy, and that was Marcos Martin.
Mm.
And then the guy goes on to, by force of will or talent or God, or the combination of the three, to become a really marvelous artist, to the point where, I don't think you can see it behind me, but here, I'll shine the light so you can see the background. On my shelf back there is the Batgirl: A Celebration of 50 Years
Oh,
hardcover
yep. Yep. Yep.
with a Marcos Martin cover.
Mm-hmm.
So Marcos, I tip the No Man's Land hat to you, because you really figured it out. And you've given us such wonderful stories, and may you continue to do so.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. Yeah. He's one of my favorite artists, to be honest. So when I saw his name, I got so excited, and it just fits. It fits the story. So I love it.
we'll go back to that previous page with the explosion.
Oh, the explosion.
Yeah.
It's fun. Yeah. It
No,
feels
I'm
like it.
laughing.
Yeah.
Look at the sound effect.
The
Look at the sound.
boom.
Right. It's not ba-boom. It's like ba-boom.
Yeah.
It's like a Brooklyn ba-boom. It's like, hey, ba-boom. Oh, that just cracks me up.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you told that story, and yeah, you brought him up because it was, yeah, I love it. I really enjoyed this issue. I thought that it was fun and also heartbreaking too with those Dick and Babs conversations.
Okay, I agree. Quick thing on this page over here,
Sure,
back to Gorf's 401.
please.
Look at panel 3
One, two, three.
and
Yep.
look at the first balloon. Albie, love you. And I bet this wasn't Albie's fault. I bet I know what happened here. Look at that first balloon. You see how there's too much white space, too
At
much
the
negative
top.
space at the top?
Yeah.
You know what page are you on here? Let me look at it on my laptop.
19.
No, 19. Okay, so it's not page 19 as in the PDF.
18.
Yeah,
Yeah.
got it. Okay. I bet there was originally something there, another word, and the editor said you have to delete this.
Okay.
And that's why that white space is there. It just does not make sense that Albie would have done it this way. And as an editor, what I probably would have done is I would have asked the production department to adjust the balloon around it, and they would have hated me because they would have said it's pointless, nobody's going to notice it. But what can I tell you? I'm just that way. Okay,
Sure.
and then last panel, where's the bad tangent? And I'll give you a hint. It's a balloon with an object.
Oh no.
Actually,
Is it the one by Tim's head?
yes, it is. But I think Tim's head overlaps it on the right, so I'll let that one go. Although I would agree with you that the hair is forming a bad tangent, so it's not completely successful. I'd say the fist on the left side. It looks like she's punching the word balloon into Tim's head.
Oh, interesting. Yeah.
And you're close to a bad tangent with that last balloon and the Condiment King's
In the
face.
head,
But
yeah.
yeah, but
Interesting.
yeah, we'll let that one go.
Yeah.
All right. So there's my Gore 401 deep dive for this
Thank you
issue.
for that, Professor.
My pleasure.
And I think it's the Scoville.
That is such a
isn't it?
chilling image.
Yeah. The one, this one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good gosh, look at that.
Yeah.
Whew, nice job.
He used to be such a fun guy.
Yeah,
Well,
although I will say proportion problems here. What do you think I'm going to criticize?
Probably the top versus the bottom.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We got some issues here. And here's, folks, here's how you can tell. Take your hand and cover from the belt down and look at the top. Now take your hand and cover the top, but not the bottom.
Yeah.
Now look at it together. And you can see how off it is. The top is way too big for the bottom. It's proportionally off. And I would argue that and I'm not looking closely enough at it, but I'd argue that you have a bad tangent between the bottom of the foot and the bottom of the panel border.
Oh, okay.
It's little things, but the artists who get it, there's just something subtle. There's something undefinable, but you get it when you look at it, and you just know that this is good art. Or this is somebody who's really proficient. Now, Marcos was still at the beginning of his career by this point, so we're going to cut him a lot of slack. There's a lot that's wonderful about it, and the guy's learning and improving, and you're wonderful. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, I'm going to rate this out of 10 ghost peppers.
Hey, that's right.
Yeah, there weren't any of those. Let me think about this. I did really like it. I think an 8.5 out of 10 ghost peppers for this one. Love the art and the poignant conversations, and then especially the Condiment King and having this team up was fun.
Okay, so 8.5. So it's a hot issue.
It is
Those peppers.
on the Scoville scale, yes.
Yes.
Okay, our final one, getting
Did
back
you
to
look
the,
that up, by the way, or did you
I
remember that?
didn't, but I remembered it. I mean, I
Oh
could still
wow,
be wrong, but it's good.
I give you credit.
I was just like, I
Nice
think
job.
it's SCOBY, but wait, no, that's in the that stuff that people drink all the time. Uh,
Well
Kombucha,
played.
the SCOBY. Okay,
Yes.
so this is our last one. Getting back to the status quo of Babs and Dinah. So this is Birds of Prey
Yay.
number 38, The Next
Yeah,
Little
that
Thing.
dynamic has been absent the last two
I
issues, right?
know.
Completely.
It sure has,
It's
yeah.
not like Birds of Prey. It's like Bird of Prey and Bird of Prey.
Yeah. Okay, so February 2002 is the cover date. Writer Chuck Dixon, penciler James Fry again, inker Andrew Peepoy, colors Gloria Vasquez, associate editor Michael Wright, and editor Matt Idelson. Black
And letters
Canary,
by Albie de Guzman.
there you go. Thank you.
And notice, by the way, the color separations here are done by Wildstorm FX. What
Okay.
year did this comic come out in?
It says
2002.
2002, but yeah,
Right.
probably.
Um, here's an interesting thing to look into because
Mm-hmm.
you can tell a lot by who does what era this is. So this means that Wildstorm was probably purchased by DC Comics at this point, and they started using Wildstorm for the separations because now it's all in house. They don't have to pay an outside vendor for this. It's all a line item budget on the internal budget. So they still have Gloria doing it, but I wouldn't be surprised if um, in the near future you will see a credit box in which Wildstorm is doing everything, and there's no longer an individual colorist credited
Mm,
for it.
gotcha.
Because again, this is taking looking at the business side of things,
Mm-hmm.
and it makes sense to amortize your costs.
Yeah.
Okay, anyway, that's just my conjecture. I could be completely wrong.
Okay. So yeah, our synopsis here: Black Canary is climbing up the outside of General Robotics, a la Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, while Oracle is cozy in the clock tower, which
Domo arigato, General Roboto. Okay, go ahead.
as absolutely like that. She is giving info and directions, which is her normal shtick. It seems that General Robotics is about to roll out some new tech, and there are whispers of espionage effort from Relasian electronics giant, which we all love Relasia. During a delivery, the saboteur kills a security officer and infiltrates the building. Meanwhile, Black Canary is stuck in an air duct while two nerds discuss sweets and Star Trek. An explosion occurs, and Black Canary is not in time to prevent the saboteur being taken over by a colony of nanites, which use him as their environment. Black Canary.
The 90s.
Black Canary fights him while actively trying to avoid him because she's afraid that they'll take over her. It looks like she's going to share his fate until Oracle accesses the building's electricity and kills the lights, shutting him down as the nanites need that power source. The nanites then start to meld with the saboteur's body, feeding on him. He is later taken to the slab where a cure can possibly be worked out, and when asked what his name is, he says, "We are Venom. I mean, we are Entity."
Yep.
So that
Well
is,
done.
I mean,
Um,
it was basically that.
yeah. But by the way, one little nit I'll put in here as I was reading through it. Uh, Babs says, "Don't come in contact with him," and then Dinah kicks him. Isn't that coming in contact with him?
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay,
Okay,
Phil Noto
here we
doing a
go. Yeah, our last one.
uh, little
Yeah.
Art Deco steampunk kind of cover.
It does, yeah, and it's got Oracle. So I have a friend, Professor Carolyn Coca, and she had looked at all these covers throughout the ages. She wrote a book called Superwoman, Gender, and I can't remember what. But anyways,
That's
it's
okay. I'll have to look it up.
yeah, and she won an Eisner for it, so it is recommended. But she talks about the floating head of Barbara because often covers will have just her head, and
Yeah.
then Dinah will be full bodied. But here we actually see Dinah full bodied, Babs full bodied, and then of course the head representation of Oracle, which is great. And I love how the wheelchair itself
Yeah.
blends into that machinery. So I feel like this is a really, I love this cover actually.
Yeah, this cover is really super. And I also really like the extremely muted palette of the rest of the cover that helps the two figures pop. And the use of color because you look at the color, you take away Black Canary, and you just look at Barbara Gordon on this cover over here, and she kind of matches. She's kind of within that palette. Black Canary is not at all within this palette.
Yeah.
She's a thing of her own, and he's not changing it up. He's not shifting the tones. I bet if you put this side by side with his other covers, her coloring on her costume is consistent with what he always does, and he totally makes it work. And I think what helps it is you have the blue in the eyes and the blue in the window and the blue in the little TV screen where it says birds and prey. Even clever, and I'm sure Phil designed it this way, and said to the cover editor, please put in the logo in such and such way, so the of goes over there and it fits, and it's brilliant. One of my favorite, I'm gonna, for those of you who are fans of wonderful coloring, I'm gonna steer you to the Hanukkah brothers, Tomer and Asaf, and I always get them confused which is which, but both of them are wonderful. Look up their work. They are graphic novel illustrators, and they have a philosophy of coloring that I think Phil Noto probably subscribes to, which is they will use as the foundation for their coloring two colors that are tones from the same color and one complementary color. So for example, they'll use two shades of something that's red and then, or orange, and then they'll have green. And it's so lively and beautiful and sensible. And I think that's kind of what's going on over here. You have shades of earth tones and then blue. And it's orange and blue. It's orange and green. These are complementary colors. And that's why it works so well.
Absolutely. And just like I like some hints as to what's going on, I feel like with the steampunk version, you at least get a sense, maybe with the electronics or what the building has going on inside and everything. So a little bit of a hint, but yeah, I think, yeah, absolutely. The contrasting and how Baz's chair blends in and everything, I think it works really well.
Yeah, well, it's interesting. So when you analyze a cover, you always go back to what kind of relationship does it have with the story in the interior pages. Good for you. That's a very fair criteria to judge a cover by.
Yeah. Well, because sometimes we've been
or
faked out.
By which to judge a cover.
Yeah, there have been times.
You get faked out.
Yeah, but I feel like in an error, so someone might be put on the cover and he was nowhere to be found in the issue, and those are the ones I'm like, why, what happened here?
So I can give you a couple reasons why things like that happen.
Oh, please.
Hang on, I think we froze up a little bit. Just waiting for it to unfreeze.
Okay.
There you go. Okay, I can't. There you go. You're back. So I can give you a reason why sometimes the cover will be so completely unrelated to the interior, and usually it has to do with deadlines.
Oh, okay.
If a cover is running late or it had to be rejected or whatever, then you generally have some artwork that is being held in the drawer, and you just pull it out and you slot it in. And if it doesn't quite match up, well, the train's got to run on time, so that's just the way it goes.
Makes sense.
Or sometimes somebody just wanted to draw a Batman with the Condiment King, and
there you go.
And since it's somebody awesome, you let it go.
Yep.
Yeah. But by the way, a thing I forgot to point out before, I think it was last issue. So Pamela Isley was in Blackgate for many years and taught him over many years. If you wanted to nit on the continuity, then you would say that just doesn't make sense, because clearly she's out and about in Gotham City.
That's true. In Robinson Park, right?
Yeah. And but I would say, whatever. If it's good for the story, just let it go.
It's true. I did wonder what her motives would be. Like, what exactly would she be getting out of it?
I know. I wonder that also. I'd love to see the story. That story. Chuck, write us that story.
Condiment King shipping with yeah, poison ivy for sure.
Yeah,
Um
seriously.
so I did
And
remember the full title of that book because I feel like Carolyn Coca is really angry with me and gonna yell at me. It's
yeah.
Superwomen, Gender, Power, and oh no. Oh my gosh, I had it. Oh no. Representation. Okay, gender, power, and representation. So I'm so sorry, Carolyn. But anyways, highly recommend it. So I flipped to this because I noticed it's a no-no. I noticed some handles that
Yep.
James Fry decided to draw.
Yeah. Yep. Somebody would. I mean, the whole thing, the armrests, it's a hospital wheelchair. It's the stereotypical hospital
Yeah.
wheelchair. So, what can I tell you? That's just the way it happens sometimes.
Yeah. Did this feel like for you a classic Birds of Prey adventure?
Yeah, I did. And honestly, James Fry's artwork is really of a piece with what came before it, with Butch Geis, who was on it, and Greg Land, who obviously kicked it off. Um, and from that perspective, it really does help it to feel like a classic Birds of Prey adventure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And of course, look, Chuck's writing it, so of course it's going to feel that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, getting back to them going back and forth and having fun with each other. And now, of course, it's more intimate because, of course, they've met each other and they
Yeah.
know each other's names, which is great. Relasia, I love when that little country pops up.
Oh yeah, I
And
meant
more
to
of
ask
a,
you about that before. Sorry, finish your thought. I'll remember
oh,
my
I was just
question.
going to say, and more of a grounded mission. It's not like huge or in another
Right.
nation, it's trying to prevent some sabotage. And then, of course, yeah, some kind of extreme with nanites and things like that. But for the
Yeah.
most part, I felt like, hey, we're getting back to Birds of Prey and our two girls just having a regular old mission.
Okay, so two things here.
Sure.
One is, do you feel, this is going to be my question from before, do you feel that a universe is more interesting when you come up with fictionalized
Mm,
names for locations, or when it's more grounded in reality? You know, the Marvel universe has New York and Chicago, whatever,
yeah.
and the DC universe has Metropolis and Gotham, and
Yep.
famously, Metropolis is New York City above 42nd Street, and Gotham City is below 42nd Street.
Yeah. I like some of these made, Real Asia, I enjoy that popping up from time to time. So I like the made up locations, I think. It's more of maybe the social or cultural or political things that I like to see sometimes bring some realism in that and reflect the day to day of what I'm living. Not all the time, because this is escapism as well, but
Yeah,
just to reflect, oh yeah, these things are happening. There is police violence happening, that kind of thing. But
yeah.
I like my made up countries.
And my second question for you is, what what is a classic Birds of Prey story
Oh,
or
interesting.
adventure? That's what you called it, an
Sure. Yeah.
adventure. What are the ingredients?
Yes. For me, it is Barbara leading the way, being the guiding force at the clock tower, giving some good old directions, maybe stealing some funds from Blockbuster, as is her way.
wait,
And Dinah's out in the field.
wait.
Lots of
Blockbuster, the video store, or Blockbuster, the Batman villain?
the Batman villain, because she was
Okay.
stealing his funds. Am I am I
No,
mistaken?
no. You're absolutely right. You're
Oh, okay.
absolutely right. But it
I'm like,
was
oh
the
no, is it
90s.
not
No,
Blockbuster?
I'm sorry. I don't mean to put you on the spot there. But in the 90s, we used to get videotapes out of
Oh,
Blockbuster. We had to rent them for Blockbuster.
of course. I
So
was in that era, yeah.
I think it's too late now. And I don't know if Chuck ever did this, but having Blockbuster's secret hideout in a Blockbuster store,
Oh,
oh, now that would have been
that
sweet.
would have been great.
That
Yeah,
would have been some sweet relish from the Condiment King.
absolutely. Yeah, when Captain Marvel, the film, when she crashes, I guess, in a
Yeah,
Blockbuster, I thought, oh, look, there it is.
yeah.
Yeah. Um,
So the ingredients of a
yeah.
classic Birds of Prey adventure, what are they?
Yeah. So field agent is Dinah for me. But I'm looking forward to adding to that roster. I can't wait for that to happen. And Babs the brains behind all of it. And for I love when Dixon does a cold opening. This one didn't really have it, but maybe it's the tail end of a mission, and then you go into the main part of the mission. I love when he does that. Or
Mm.
he has a feint, and it seems like something really bad is happening. I remember it was probably when you were still during your tenure when Babs gave Dinah a computer, and
Yeah.
you only see Dinah's horrified face, like not that, not that. So you think something horrible has happened, but then you pan out and it's a computer. So things like that that he does, just the action as well as the humor, and then the camaraderie between the women, kind of is my classic.
Well, I don't think we can do better than that. I think you're absolutely right.
So for the most part, I think this fits the bill, with the exception of the cold opening that we didn't have. But
Yeah.
yeah,
I
so
sometimes Chuck will do the framing sequence where he'll start the story in the middle and then flash back to where it all began and then catch up to that was not meant as a Condiment King pun, um, to where you began. And
yeah.
that's another example of your question from earlier, which is how much do you repeat
Mm,
information or scenes that you've
sure.
already had before? And even within a story, you can have that question. You don't necessarily need it to be this huge crossover in order to
Mm-hmm.
confront that issue.
Yep. And then we have this guy, which I can't remember. I've not read the whole Birds of Prey run before, but I've read a sizable portion. So this is almost like the first time. But I don't know if Entity comes back. But next, Bruce Wayne Murderer, which my friend Donovan keeps telling me is the event that all of this stuff is leading up to, and is the big event of this. I don't know, 2001 and everything. So
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know what? You and I will be reading it together at the same time. I don't think I read it either.
okay. Any other thoughts on this particular issue 38?
No, I think you've covered it very adequately. I'm
Okay.
looking forward to seeing the measurement by which you're going to be rating this
No,
issue.
I actually didn't write one down this time. Let me see if I can do a quick scan.
Oh, it's obvious. Nanites. How many
Nanites?
nanites do
Okay,
you
so out
give
of
this?
10 million nanites.
There you go. Good.
Well, because there are so many.
Yes, that's right.
I think I would give this in 8. I liked it a little bit less than the other one, but still classic. So an 8 million out of 10 million nanites.
Okay, very good.
My final question, because I scanned through and I saw those letter pages. Did you have
Yeah,
fun doing the letters when you were writing in that column and everything?
I actually hadn't thought about letter pages for a long time until very recently. And the answer is yes, that was the look, that was the social media of the time.
Mm, yep.
And we had relationships with through their letters with the readers, so that was really one of the few ways besides conventions that we were able to have that connection. I my very first job. We'll say this for another time, but I have fond feelings for letter columns because of where I started in comics. But I will admit that letter columns became a chore for
Mm.
a period of time because I was doing 4 or 6 of them a month, and I had to retype all of those letters
Oh,
when the internet finally started becoming a thing. And we would get the letters, and all we would have to do was copy and paste.
yeah.
For that very short period of time, it was blessedly so much better. But of
Mm.
course, very shortly after, it became obvious that you don't need to print letters anymore. We now have the internet where you can just read them in their original source.
Mm.
So that kind of did away the letter column, which is a
Gotcha.
shame because the give and take was always a lot of fun. And I think as a fan, the idea that you could write in and maybe you could be included in the
Mm-hmm.
publication, you could be a little part of history, that was just so saucy, as the Condiment King would say. And you just loved having that opportunity if you would be so blessed
Yeah.
or so dressed, as the Condiment King said to Pamela Isley as she made a salad.
Oh my, or so dressed. Yeah. I remember
Yes.
recently someone wrote in angry because there was a scrawl, I think it's a scroll at the top of one of the issues that says, in this issue, Batman dies. And this person bought it and he did not normally read Birds of Prey, and so he read it because of that. And he wrote in and said, "How dare you do this?" And I guess the person at the time, whoever it was, the editor, was saying, "Sorry you didn't like our joke." So, yikes.
Yeah, right. There's a joke that we used to have with Denny, and the joke was, we got it right the third time. And I'll save the explanation of that joke along with the Batgirl San Diego story and the map Greg Rucka
Oh,
story and all
yeah.
the other stuff for another time.
Who's going to remember all of this?
No one cares.
I'm going to have to jot this down for, when you come on and just talk about, your time and everything. I think that's it. I will say, for my "What are you wearing?" I did get a Batgirl shirt.
Oh, that's wonderful. Okay, who
I'm a
drew
night
that shirt?
person. I'm sorry?
Who drew that shirt? Who's
Uh-oh.
the artist?
I don't know. That's my favorite costume. I don't know.
I'm betting it was Jose Garcia Lopez, Jose Luis
Oh,
Garcia Lopez.
okay.
He did a
Yeah.
lot of stock drawings back then. I'm blanking on what the technical term was. A lot of the Darren Vincenzo helped me. A lot of the Darren's yelling at the podcast right now. Da, 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 da. Think of the word. He did a lot of the style guide.
Oh, okay.
Darren started in the
I
production
see.
department, so nobody knows style guide like Darren.
Gotcha.
And in fact, if you go into the bathrooms in DC Comics, it says, Darren knows style guide.
Okay.
Anyway, it's a very, very old bad joke. Oh, I've really got to stop before I make it any worse. Anyway, so he was a wonderful artist who did a lot of that stuff and also drew a lot of wonderful stories and had the best accent.
Oh.
Jose, he used to come in and he would speak like this. And we would just listen to Jose. He was like the very first ASMR Batman artist.
Oh. Calmed everyone down during really.
Yes. Okay, enough.
No worries. Yeah. But thanks to Dustin, my editor, who got this for me. He saw it and he's like, "I'll get this for you." But anyways.
Way to go, Dustin.
Yeah. So we are at the end. So I'd love for you to just talk about what you're doing now, where people can find you and support you and all of that.
Oh gosh, if you're not totally sick of me and you've been over-gorfed at this point, you can
There's no
find
such
me.
thing.
Ask my kids. Ask Darren and Scott. You can find me at Jewish Cartoon, and at Jewish Cartoon on Instagram is what I'm trying to build up right now, where you will see my weekly Jewish cartoon, obviously, hence the title. But I also do a series of videos in which I will get into the nuts and bolts of comics creation and storytelling that applies across all media. And I also feature all kinds of just fun flashbacks from my archives of all kinds of Batman stuff. For example, in the very first video of this series that I did, I flipped through the original script from Azrael, Sword of Azrael #1 by Denny O'Neil.
Okay.
So you can tune in and see fun stuff like that. But mostly I'm just looking for a like-minded community who wants to hang out and give me feedback.
Sure.
And on Twitter, where I admit I mostly post articles of interest. I do very little tweeting per se, but I see it as kind of the voice of what I'm interested in right now. On Facebook, and so on and so forth. And you can, if you want more details, you can go to gorfy.com, GRFY.com, and there's a profile and links to all kinds of fun stuff. And what am I up to? Gosh, I'm building a new storytelling incubator using graphic novels as a foundation. And I'm in the middle of that process right now, looking like it's going to be a nonprofit effort to be focused on education, and we'll see how that progresses. And it's building off of my last project, which was the Passover Haggadah graphic novel. On Passover, we celebrate by having a kind of a dinner theater around our family table. And there's a guidebook, and the guidebook is called the Haggadah. In Hebrew, the word Haggadah, the root of it is lehagid, which means to tell. And we're telling a story. And that ties everything together, because as a Jewish person celebrating the holidays, we're telling a story. And now I'm using all of my superpower of storytelling to do that for education. And there you go. It's full circle. I'm losing my ability to string two sentences together. So if you want to learn more, go on the internet and find me, and I
Yeah,
will be glad to have you.
that's great. I mean, I would love to take some sort of class from you because I learned such a great deal from this episode, just these couple hours that we talked just about the process and everything. So I'm so appreciative that you came on to talk to me.
Well, thank you. So I'm so glad you reached out, and again, a pleasure, a lot of fun, and you actually surprised me because I didn't think that I'd be able to talk about comics that I didn't work on, and it turns out I can't shut up about them. So
There you go.
go figure. And
Yeah.
please send my regards to your fellow podcasterati. And they're all doing a wonderful job. I look forward to catching up on all their stuff also, and continue to do the wonderful analysis that you folks do, and bring
Thank
out
you.
more women.
Oh, yes. I do have, I think I've only had a couple on, which I don't know if that's the friend pool that I'm in with podcasting, or it's just, again, women are still a small percentage of comic fans, but I
Well,
know
you know
it's
what?
growing, so I don't know.
I'm going to put her on the spot right now, but I'm going to recommend a guest just to chat.
Sure.
She is my former assistant, and she's working at Boom Studios right now. And
Oh,
she is one of the smartest, brightest, most capable women working in comics. And you two will totally hit it off. So I'm going to recommend her as a guest for you.
okay. It's not someone who worked on Lumberjanes, was it?
I don't know what she works on. Could be.
Okay.
Who knows?
I'm a big fan of that. That'd be a fun. Yeah, please. I would love to talk to another woman about, yeah, some of these comics. That'd be fun.
So you know what? I'm going to make her watch this podcast. She's
Oh
allowed to watch it on
no.
two. Oh, by the way, I've always wanted to do this. For those of you who are listening on 2 times speed, I want to know if you can understand what I'm saying if I'm speaking this fast, because it's always interesting to me what happens to my voice if I'm listening to it on 2 times speed.
I don't know. You can increase the speed on YouTube videos too, so they can
Yes, you
try.
can. And
Yeah.
I do. But I'm really curious. Can you understand a word I just said if you're listening to it on 2 times or 3 times? Okay.
I don't
I
know.
didn't eat. This is non-alcoholic, and this is what I'm like.
Well, there you go. Okay, well, we're gonna take a break. Obviously, Gorf is not coming back with me, but when I come back, I'll be with Brian Q. Miller, and we're gonna be reviewing Batgirl 15, 16, and 18. I know it all makes sense though, from 2001. But first, is his Radio Hour featuring Joan of Arc on the Dance Floor by Allie and AJ. See you guys
And
soon.
please send my regards to Brian Q. Miller, because I love his writing. I've never met him. I've never had anything to do with him. I love, love, love his writing.
I
His
will.
his Stephanie Batgirl was
Oh,
just, I just ate it up.
yes.
So you go, Brian.
Yeah, one of my favorite runs.
Yep. Okay. You got to let me go now because